Welcome everyone. So in this lecture we are going to cover a new chapter which comes in 11th NCERT. That's the last chapter which is in human physiology. It is called chemical coordination and integration. So in this chapter we are going to study about endocrine system, endocrine glands, what do they secrete hormones, how many hormones are there, what functions they do, that we are going to study in this chapter. Now 21st chapter is about nervous system and this chapter is about endocrine system. Now nervous system, how do they connect? From one neuron to other neuron, from this neuron to other neuron, they send the impulses, but there are certain regions where the neurons cannot penetrate. Now who will control those cells where neurons cannot penetrate? There should be some other coordinated system, that is endocrine system. That is a necessity of endocrine system. So we can tell that there are two coordinated systems in our body which will coordinate all the body parts, all the digestive, respiratory, excretory, reproductive systems of the body. So what are those systems which can coordinate all the body functions? Means one is neural system, other one is endocrine system. Together we call it as neuroendocrine system. So they work to maintain homeostasis of the body, to maintain body in a balanced state, right? So then what is endocrinology? We know biology, biotechnology, so like that. Ology means study. Endocrinology is a study of, it's a branch of science, it's a study of endocrine glands. What do they secrete? Hormones. And what are their functions? If you study what are endocrine glands, what are the hormones they are secreting, what are the functions they are doing, what are the disorders that are caused if the hormones are not produced in sufficient amounts, all comes under endocrinology. And who is father of endocrinology? Means Thomas Edison is father of endocrinology. Why is he called father of endocrinology? What is that significant contribution he has done for which he has credited? Father of endocrinology means he identified the first hormonal deficiency disorder, and it is named after his name only, Edison's disease. Edison's disease occurs due to hyposecretion, deficiency of adrenal cortical hormones. That is why he is called father of endocrinology. What is the meaning of endo? Endo means inside, exo means outside, crinin means to secrete, means endocrine glands are located inside and they are secretory in nature. That's what is the meaning of endocrinology or endo. So if you see here, we have pineal gland, pituitary gland, hypothalamus, which are inside located in the nervous system. They are located. So pineal gland, hypothalamus, pituitary glands are endocrine glands only. And here if you see below the trachea, butterfly shaped, thymus is there, means thyroid gland is there, thymus is also here only, and this is leaf shaped pancreatic gland which is also endocrine gland. On top of the kidney we can see adrenal gland which is also an endocrine gland, and at the gonads, if it is male, then they have testis as a reproductive structure or as an endocrine structure, and if it is female, ovaries will secrete estrogen hormone. So all these are endocrine glands. Now if we talk about endocrine glands, which type of glands are they? Endocrine glands are ductless glands. Ductless glands means they release their secretions into the blood. Since ducts are not there, they cannot release the hormones into the ducts. They release their secretions into the blood, and blood has to take that hormone and it has to deliver to its target location. Endocrine glands are ductless glands. Where are they located? Inside they are located. What do they secrete? Hormones. What are hormones? They are chemical messengers and they are released into the blood. Since ducts are not there, they are released into the blood and they will control the physiological functions of the body. They will control physiological functions of the body. Here I have quickly we'll see the differences between nervous system and endocrine system. Then we will get clearly into the endocrine system. Nervous system, quick responses. Endocrine system, slow and sustained responses. In nervous system, point to point neurons are connected, but here blood acts as a transporter to take the things. In nervous system, electric synapses are there, chemical synapses are there. Whereas in endocrine system, they are chemical messengers. They can be primary messenger, it can be secondary messenger. And nervous system shows short-term effects, whereas endocrine system show long-term effects. Now neurons do not innervate, cannot innervate all the deeper parts and deeper cells, whereas endocrine system, because it is releasing hormones into the blood can deliver it to each and every tiny corner of the cell. Then nervous system is suitable for quick reactions. If you keep your hand on a hot plate, quickly you will remove it. So that is called reflex. For quick reflexes, nervous system is required, whereas endocrine system is required for long-term sustained changes like growth. It continues till 18 years from time of birth. Then next one, if you take pregnancy, for 9 months it will continue, and reproduction from the age of puberty. In boys it will be till death, in girls it will be till menopause. So these are sustained changes. So for long-term changes, endocrine system is responsible. For very quick reflexes, nervous system is responsible. So take a screenshot, then we will continue with hormones. Right, so now let us talk about hormones. This is an easy chapter, and luckily it has more weightage for NEET also and board also. So what did we see here? We just saw the introductory part to the chapter. Now we will get into the chapter in detail. Now do you know what is the first hormone to be discovered? Secretin is the first hormone to be discovered. And who discovered that hormone, you know? Baylis and Starling discovered that hormone. And which cells have secreted that hormone? Duodenal cells, the mucosal cells of the duodenum will secrete that hormone. So I have kept here this diagram where we can see the endocrine glands. So we can see pituitary gland here, hypothalamus, pineal gland, thyroid gland, thymus, pancreatic gland, adrenal gland. So these are the glands we can see through that picture. Yes, come on. Now, what was the first hormone to be discovered? Secretin is the first hormone to be discovered. And which cells secreted secretin? The duodenal cells of the gastrointestinal tract, they secreted secretin. And who discovered the first hormone? Baylis and Starling discovered the first hormone in the year 1903. What is the meaning of the hormone? According to Baylis and Starling, the Greek meaning of hormone means to excite. Okay, so let us write down the first hormone to be discovered. What is that first hormone to be discovered? Secretin. Now secretin is secreted by which cells? It is secreted by duodenal cells, duodenal mucosal cells. Who discovered the first hormone? The first hormone was discovered by scientists called Baylis and Starling. What is the Greek meaning of hormone? The Greek meaning of hormone means to excite. It's to excite. Now there are stimulating hormones also, there are inhibiting hormones also. So don't think that all hormones are exciting in action. So that means we can tell the word hormone is a misnomer because there are certain hormones which are inhibiting also. Understood? So then if we have to talk about the definition of hormones, there is scientific definition also, there is classical definition also. In NCERT they have given both the definitions. First, if we have to talk about the classical definition. Now, what is the classical definition of hormones? Now, classical definition means hormones means they are chemicals produced by endocrine glands. Since they are ductless glands, they are released into the blood and they are transported by blood to distinctly located target organs. So, this is a classical definition. So, what is the classical definition of hormones? They are chemicals produced by endocrine glands. These are chemicals produced by endocrine glands. These are the chemicals produced by endocrine glands, and where are they released? Since they are ductless glands, they are released into the blood. Produced by endocrine glands and are released into blood, and blood transports these hormones to distinctly located target organs. For example, if you see, this is pancreas. Pancreas will release insulin, and insulin has to go to each and every cell of the body, then only the cell can take glucose, right? So the pancreas is releasing insulin, and that insulin is being supplied by the blood to all the cells. So blood will transport that hormone to the distinctly located target organs. This is a classical definition, and I told there's another definition also. What is that scientific definition? If we go with the current scientific definition. Now, what is a current scientific definition? This is a better definition. In this current scientific definition, we will tell hormones are non-nutrient chemicals, because hormones are protein by nature, hormones are steroid by nature. But when you break this protein or when you break the fat, you will not get energy. So that's why, according to the scientific definition, they told hormones are non-nutrient chemicals. They act as intercellular messengers. According to the current scientific definition, we tell hormones are non-nutrient, means if you break it, you don't get any nutrition. They are non-nutrient chemicals. They are non-nutrient chemicals which act as messengers. Which type of messengers? Intercellular messengers. They act as messengers. They transmit the impulses. They act as intercellular messengers, and they are produced in huge quantities. Are they produced in very trace amounts? They are produced in very trace amounts. They act as messengers and are produced in trace quantities. Hormones are produced in trace quantities. So this is a classical definition of hormone, and this is a scientific definition of hormone. When we have to talk about the hormones, which type of endocrine system is present in invertebrates and which type of endocrine system is present in vertebrates, means in invertebrates, the endocrine system is very simple. It is very simple, and it has only few hormones. We can tell in invertebrates, the endocrine system is simple and is containing few hormones only. Endocrine system first originated in Arthropoda. So, endocrine system was first originated in which kingdom? In Arthropoda, cockroach family. And if we talk about vertebrates like humans, vertebrates, they have complex endocrine system. They have complex endocrine system with few hormones or many hormones, with many hormones having many functions. Now, what did we study in this board? We talked about the first hormone which is secreted. It is secretin. Who discovered the first hormone? Baylis and Starling. From which cells they have isolated the hormone? From the duodenal mucosal cells. What is the meaning of the hormone? To excite. But there are inhibitory hormones also. So we can tell hormone word is a misnomer. Now coming to the definition, we have seen the classic definition and we have seen the modern scientific definition, which talks about it's an intracellular messenger, it's a non-nutrient chemical, and it is synthesized in trace amounts. All important points are covered in this current definition. Now talk about invertebrates. In invertebrates, the endocrine system is simple and it has very few hormones. Endocrine system first originated in which phylum? It is Arthropoda. Now in vertebrates, it is a complex endocrine system having many hormones. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about the classification of hormones. Endocrine glands also will produce hormones, and diffuse the cells and tissues also. Gastrointestinal tract, it is not an endocrinal part, but it is secreting secretin, it is secreting cholecystokinin, right, gastrin, all those things. So endocrine glands also will secrete hormones. Diffuse the cells and tissues also will secrete hormones. together. Endocrine glands and all the diffuse cells and tissues which secrete these hormones together is called as endocrine system. Now, what endocrine system comprises of which type of glands means we can tell endocrine system comprises of endocrine glands also, and I told diffused tissues also. Some tissues also will secrete hormones, some cells also will secrete hormone. Together is called endocrine system. Now first let us see what are the endocrine glands. What are the major endocrine glands if we have to see? Major endocrine glands constitute, I told you the first one is hypothalamus, which is in the brain. Okay, so the first hormone we can write is hypothalamus. Then next one, from hypothalamus through the stalk pituitary gland will hang. This is another endocrine gland. Then pineal gland is also there itself. This is also endocrine gland. Then thyroid gland is an endocrine gland. Thymus is an endocrine gland. Parathyroid gland, behind the thyroid, parathyroid gland will be there. Then next one, pancreas is an endocrine gland. After pancreas, adrenal. And then comes gonads. The male gonad is testis, the female gonad is ovaries. Now these are the major endocrine glands. So we can start from pituitary. Now pituitary is controlled by hypothalamus. So the first one is hypothalamus, which is there in forebrain. Pituitary hangs from the hypothalamus through a stalk called infundibulum. Pineal gland is also in the brain only. Then thyroid gland, it is located here. The trachea, thyroid gland is located. Thymus near to the heart is located. Now parathyroid gland behind the thyroid gland, in the thyroid lobes itself, parathyroid gland will be located. Pancreas in the C-shaped duodenum, that leaf-shaped gland, pancreas is located. Adrenal gland on top of the kidneys, it is located. And reproductive glands, they are called gonads. Male gonad is called testis, female gonad is called ovaries. So these are the major endocrine glands. In addition to these major endocrine glands, other organs are also there, right? So what are the other organs or diffuse tissues? The other organs which also secrete hormones, but they are not purely endocrine. What are they if we have to tell? So we should talk about gastrointestinal tract. Gastrointestinal tract also will secrete hormone. Liver will also secrete hormone. Kidneys also will secrete hormone. Heart also secretes hormone. Now if you ask what are the hormones secreted by gastrointestinal tract, what are the hormones secreted by the liver, kidneys and heart? Heart secretes a hormone called ANF. What is that? Atrial natriuretic factor. Heart secretes a hormone called atrial natriuretic factor. In simple, we call it as ANF. Okay. Now kidneys will secrete a blood forming hormone called erythropoietin. Kidneys will secrete a hormone called erythropoietin. Now liver will secrete a factor called insulin like growth promoting factor. Liver will secrete a hormone which is called insulin like growth promoting factor. And gastrointestinal tract will secrete many hormones, like the first hormone is from here only, secretin. Then we can tell gastrin. Then we can tell cholecystokinin, gastric inhibitory peptide. So all these are the hormones secreted by gastrointestinal tract. So we are telling these are the major endocrine glands which will secrete hormones. There are some other tissues which are not endocrine but still they secrete hormones. For examples they mentioned in NCERT, one is gastrointestinal tract, I listed out the hormones. Liver, insulin like growth promoting factors. Kidneys will secrete erythropoietin and heart will secrete atrial natriuretic factor. So they will produce hormones, and these hormones are excitatory also, they are inhibitory also. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about the classification of hormones. Now we can classify hormones on different types. In NCERT they have classified hormones based on their chemical nature. That we will see first, and we will see the other classifications as well. Now on chemical basis we can classify hormones into 4 major groups. On the chemical basis, hormones are classified into 4 major groups. Now what are the 4 major groups? If the hormones are derived from, they are made up of amino acids, proteins and peptides, that's the first category. If they are having fatty nature, steroid hormones is the second category. If they are made up of iodothyronins, iodine groups, tyrosine groups, that's called iodothyronins. And if they are directly derived from amino acids, that's called amino acid derived hormones. So the 4 broad groups are, the first group is, we will tell peptide, polypeptide and protein hormones. We will list down what are the hormones which fall under the first category. The second one we can tell steroid hormones, fat hormones. And the third one we are calling them as iodothyronin hormones, and the fourth one we are calling them as amino acid derived hormones. Basing on their chemical constitution, we can call the hormones are divided into 4 groups. First one is they can be made up of proteins or peptides or polypeptides. Then they are called protein polypeptide hormones. Examples for this one, we can make the code as all the pituitary hormones. All the pituitary hormones are protein and peptide hormones only. Anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary, and all the hypothalamic hormones also. All the hypothalamic hormones are also protein and peptide hormones only. And all the islets of Langerhans hormones also, mean insulin, glucagon. Right? So these are protein and peptide hormones. What are the examples we are given for protein and peptide hormones? We told they are in islets of Langerhans, then we told pituitary hormones, hypothalamic hormones, and we can tell gastric hormones are also protein and peptide only. What are they? Gastric hormones. We told secretin, cholecystokinin, gastrin, all these things are protein and polypeptide hormones. Then if we have to talk about steroid hormones, male and female hormones, male sex hormone and female sex hormone are steroid hormones. Means male sex hormone testosterone is a steroid hormone. So examples for steroid hormones if we have to list down, so it is a male sex hormone, testosterone, female sex hormone, estrogen, and then we can tell pregnancy maintaining hormone, progesterone, and adrenal cortical hormones called cortisol and aldosterone. All these are steroid hormones, children. Pituitary hormones, hypothalamic hormones, insulin, glucagon, and gastric hormones, if they are protein and peptide hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, aldosterone are steroid hormones. Third category, what is that? Iodothyronins. We will see what are coming under iodothyronins. What do you mean by iodothyronins? So these are the hormones which contain iodine groups and they derived from tyrosine amino acid. Iodothyronins means hormones containing iodine groups and are derived from tyrosine amino acid and are derived from tyrosine. They are called iodotyronins. Examples for iodotyronins are thyroid hormones T3 and T4. Examples are thyroid hormones are examples of iodotyronins. And the fourth category we can call them as amino acid derived hormones. The fourth category is amino acid derivatives. Under amino acid derivatives, catecholamines will come. Catecholamines means epinephrine, non-epinephrine will come. Adrenal medullary hormones. Under amino acid derivatives, we are writing down the examples as cholamines, catecholamines. Catecholamines means they are adrenal medullary hormones. Adrenal medullary hormones examples are epinephrine, norepinephrine. So we have classified the hormones on the basis of their chemical constitution, and we are telling they are divided into four broad groups: protein hormones, steroid hormones, iodotyronine derivatives, and amino acid derivatives. For protein hormones, we have taken the example as hypothalamic hormones, pituitary hormones, gastric hormones, and islet hormones, means pancreatic hormones. Now for steroid hormones, we have taken testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, aldosterone as examples. For iodotyronine, we have taken thyroid hormones as examples. And for amino acid derivatives, we have taken epinephrine and norepinephrine as examples. This is one way of classifying hormones. We can also classify the hormones based on their origin. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about which hormones are ectodermally derived, which hormones are endodermally derived, which hormones are mesodermally derived. We will talk about that also. Yes. Now when we talk about another classification, what is other basis? On the basis of their origin, germinal layers, we can classify the hormones into ectodermal derived, endodermally derived, and mesodermally derived. On the basis of origin, we can classify the hormones into ectodermally derived hormones, then endodermally derived hormones, then mesodermally derived hormones. So in this way also we can classify the hormones. For mesodermally derived hormones, gonadal hormones are the examples. What are the examples of mesodermally derived hormones? Gonads. Gonadal hormones means male sex hormone and female sex hormone are examples of gonadal hormones. And for ectodermally derived hormones, we can make the code as T3, I square and G. For ectodermally, we can make the code as for 1 minute. For ectodermally, we'll make the code as HP square. We'll make the code for ectodermally derived as HP square. H stands for hypothalamus, P stands for pituitary, and another P stands for pineal. Which hormones are derived ectodermally? One is hypothalamus, next one is pituitary, and third one is pineal. Hypothalamic hormones are ectodermally derived. Pituitary is ectodermally derived, and pineal hormone is also ectodermally derived. For endodermally derived, we can make this code T3, I square and G. T3, I square and G. T stands for thymus hormone, thyroid hormone, parathyroid hormone. I stands for islets of pancreas. Islets of Langerhans we can take, and one is islets of Langerhans and second one is intestinal hormones. Intestinal glands. And next G stands for gastric glands. G stands for gastric glands. So One classification is basing on their chemical classification. We are classifying the hormones into 4 groups. The other classification basing on their origin, we are calling them as ectodermally derived, endodermally derived and mesodermally derived. For ectodermally, we have taken H and P square, HP square. H hypothalamic, P for pituitary and pineal. For endodermally, we have taken T cube, I square, G. T cube thyroid, parathyroid and Thymus. I square for islets of Langerhans, intestinal glands. G for gastric glands. For mesodermal, we have taken gonads. We can also classify the hormones on the basis of their solubility. We'll see that also. On the basis of solubility, we can classify the hormones into fat soluble hormones and water soluble hormones. For fat soluble hormones, steroid hormones will come. Steroid hormones and thyroid hormones will come. And for water soluble hormones, protein and peptide hormones will come. For water soluble hormones, protein and peptide hormones. For fat soluble hormones, male sex hormones, female sex hormones and thyroid hormones when T3, T4 will come. So this is about the classification of hormones. Then we'll talk about the endocrine glands. Under NCERT, they have given the first gland as hypothalamus, that we will take a screenshot. Now we will talk about all the endocrine glands one by one. The first one which is mentioned in NCERT is hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is in forebrain. Hypothalamus has wide range of functions because it comes in neural system also, it comes in endocrine system also. Now if you take brain is divided into 3 parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Coming to forebrain, again forebrain has olfactory lobes and it contains thalamus and it contains diencephalon, right? It contains cerebrum, it contains olfactory lobes and it contains diencephalon. In diencephalon, there are 3 parts: epithalamus, thalamus and hypothalamus. So we are talking about hypothalamus, which is in diencephalon, which is part of forebrain. So the first is hypothalamus. Where is hypothalamus? As just now we discussed, it's on the basal part. Epi is on the upper part, thalamus is in the middle part, hypothalamus is at the lower part. It is at the basal part of the diencephalon. Diencephalon is part of forebrain and hypothalamus regulates wide range of functions. It is coming in neural system also, it's coming in endocrine system also, so it has wide range of functions. Hypothalamus is called thermostat. It regulates body temperature, that we studied in neural system. Here the hormone secreting cells of hypothalamus are called as nuclei. The hormone secreting cells of hypothalamus are called as nuclei, and these nuclei secretes hormones. They secrete hormone. Hypothalamic hormones will control pituitary gland. So this is hypothalamus and this is pituitary gland. So whatever the hormones are released by hypothalamus will be coming to the pituitary gland and it will control the pituitary gland. Then how many types of hormones are released by hypothalamus? Means hypothalamus releases 2 types of hormones. One comes under releasing hormone category, the other type of hormones comes under inhibiting hormone categories. So for example, in NCERT they have given GnRH as an example, gonadotrophin releasing hormone. Hypothalamus will produce gonadotrophin releasing hormone. This gonadotrophin releasing hormone, which is produced by hypothalamus, it comes to anterior pituitary and it asks the anterior pituitary to release gonadotrophins. What are gonadotrophins? The hormones which act on gonads are gonadotrophins: luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So when will this anterior pituitary produce gonadotrophins? Means when the hypothalamus releases GnRH. So the GnRH released by the hypothalamus will come and act on anterior pituitary. Then the anterior pituitary will produce 2 gonadotrophins called LH and FSH. So like that it controls the pituitary. Now what inhibiting hormones does the hypothalamus produces? Means in NCERT they have given the example of somatostatin, static stopping. So somatostatin is a hypothalamic hormone produced by the hypothalamus. comes and acts on anterior pituitary and stops the production of somatotrophin, which is growth hormone. Growth hormone, which is trophin, somatotrophin, can be inhibited by the somatostatin, which is produced by the hypothalamic hormone. So hypothalamus produces many hormones, but all the hormones comes under two categories: releasing hormones and release inhibiting hormones. For releasing hormones, gonadotrophin releasing hormone is a category example they have given. For release inhibiting hormones, somatostatin they have given. For example, we will see, like, if hypothalamus produces a hormone, anterior pituitary produces a hormone called ACTH, adrenocorticotrophic hormone. If the anterior pituitary has to produce ACTH, then hypothalamus has to produce ACTH releasing hormone, then only this will release this hormone. If the hypothalamus produces ACTH release inhibiting hormone, then pituitary will not release this hormone. Again, pituitary, anterior pituitary will release one more hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. If the hypothalamus produces thyroid stimulating hormone release hormone, then only anterior pituitary will release TSH. If the hypothalamus produces thyroid stimulating hormone release inhibiting hormone, then anterior pituitary will not release TSH. In that manner it goes. Now if we have to label, what is this part, children? This is hypothalamus. And what is this? This is posterior pituitary. This is posterior pituitary, and this is anterior pituitary. And since we told hypothalamus is part of nervous system, so these are neurons of the hypothalamus. These are the neurons of the hypothalamus. Now this is hypothalamus, this is pituitary gland. So from the hypothalamus, pituitary gland is hanging. It is attached via a stalk. This stalk is called as infundibulum. What is this stalk called? Infundibulum. So from the hypothalamus, through a stalk called infundibulum, pituitary gland will hang. Then the hormones which are released by hypothalamus, how will they reach the anterior pituitary? Means they reach the anterior pituitary through the axons. The axons are connected to this. What is this called? Portal circulatory system. From the axons, they'll go to portal circulatory system. From the portal circulatory system, the hormones will come to anterior pituitary. Whereas if you take posterior pituitary into the posterior pituitary, the axon is directly coming from the hypothalamus. Means we can tell posterior pituitary is under direct control. It is directly connected to one neuron, whereas anterior pituitary is connected to hypothalamus via portal system, a special portal system. That's what I wrote here. So hypothalamic hormones originate from the hypothalamus axons. From here they are originating and they are coming to a portal system. They are passing through the portal system and then they reach the anterior pituitary. Children, this they asked in the previous NEET examination. This point has been asked in previous NEET examination. So through the portal system, through the portal circulatory system, hypothalamic hormones will reach the anterior pituitary. Whereas picture you can see, the hypothalamus is under direct control with the posterior pituitary. It is in direct control with the posterior pituitary. So this is about hypothalamus. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about the next hormone, next gland, which is called pituitary gland. Alright, so we finished about hypothalamus. Now what is the next gland? It's master of endocrine gland. It's also present in the brain only, which is hanging from the hypothalamus. Here we can see it is pituitary gland. Now let's talk about pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is protected in a bony cavity called sella turcica. So yeah, the second hormone, the second endocrine gland is pituitary gland. We call pituitary gland as a master of endocrine gland. Why do we call pituitary gland as master of endocrine glands? Basically, pituitary gland will release tropic hormones. Pituitary gland will release tropic hormones. Do you know what is the meaning of tropic? Tropic means it can control the other glands. The hormones released by the pituitary gland are called tropic hormones. They are going to control the other endocrine glands like adrenal gland. They're going to control the gonads. They're going to control the pancreas. So that's why we call them as tropic hormones. Since the tropic hormones are controlling all other endocrine glands, we call pituitary gland as master of endocrine gland. What's the color of the pituitary gland? It's a small red gray gland. It is the smallest endocrine gland also. It is the smallest endocrine gland, which is of pea size, that much small it is, and it is red gray in color. And where is it present? It is present in a bony cavity called sella turcica. Pituitary gland is present in bony cavity. What is that bony cavity called? Sella turcica. It's present in a bony cavity called sella turcica, and pituitary gland is present below the hypothalamus. It is attached to the hypothalamus via a stalk called infundibulum. So pituitary gland is attached to hypothalamus by a stalk. What is that stalk called? Infundibulum. Via infundibulum, pituitary gland hangs from the hypothalamus. Now, anatomically, if you see, pituitary gland is divided into two parts called adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. If we have to say anatomically, pituitary gland is divided into two parts. It is divided into two parts. What are the two parts? We can call them as adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. It is divided into two parts called adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis again has two parts in it, pars distalis and pars intermedia. Neurohypophysis has only one part called pars nervosa. So anatomically, the pituitary gland is divided into two parts, which is called adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis again has two parts called pars distalis and pars intermedia, whereas neurohypophysis has only one part, which is called pars nervosa. Pars distalis is only commonly called as anterior pituitary. It is called as anterior pituitary. Pars intermedia is called as middle lobe of pituitary. It is called as middle lobe of pituitary. Pars nervosa is called as posterior lobe of pituitary. It is called as posterior lobe of pituitary. Here in the picture, we can see this is the anterior lobe and this is the posterior lobe. In humans, the middle lobe is fused with the anterior lobe itself, and both are attached together, and it is vestigial. So we can see this is hypothalamus and this is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is hanging from the hypothalamus via a stalk called infundibulum, and this pituitary gland is protected by a bony box called sella turcica. Pituitary gland is called as master of endocrine glands. Why? It produces tropic hormones. Those tropic hormones control all other endocrine glands, and it's the smallest endocrine gland, which is of a pea-shaped, anatomically divided into two parts called adenohypophysis, neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis divided into two parts called pars distalis, pars intermedia. Pars distalis is called as anterior pituitary gland. Anterior pituitary gland produces 6 hormones. Middle lobe of pituitary produces 1 hormone. Posterior lobe of pituitary will not produce. Actually, they are hypothalamic hormones which came and stored in the posterior pituitary. It will just release 2 hormones called oxytocin and vasopressin. So posterior pituitary will release 2 hormones. Take a screenshot. We will continue. So if we have to list down the hormones produced by anterior pituitary, middle lobe and posterior pituitary, let's write down. What are? I told that there are 6 hormones produced by anterior pituitary. Yes. The anterior lobe releases 6 hormones. The middle lobe produces 1 hormone only. The posterior lobe, actually it is storing and it will release 2 hormones. The 6 anterior lobe producing hormones are: the first one is growth hormone, the second one is thyroid stimulating hormone, the third one is adrenocorticotropic hormone, the fourth one is prolactin, the fifth one is luteinizing hormone, the sixth one is follicle stimulating hormone. Once they have asked in NEET examination that how many hormones are produced by anterior lobe of pituitary. Anterior lobe of pituitary produces 6 hormones. They are: one is growth hormone, next one is thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, prolactin, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. One hormone produced by middle lobe of pituitary is called as melanocyte stimulating hormone. The 2 hormones which are released by posterior pituitary are: one is called as oxytocin and the other one is called as vasopressin. These are the 2 hormones which are released by posterior pituitary. Now we are going to talk about each and individual hormone in detail. Take a screenshot of this. Right, so now let us start with growth hormone first then. I'm removing this picture also. We understood about hypothalamus, we understood about the locations of pituitary also, and what is the connection between them. The stalk is a connection. The name of the stalk is called infundibulum. Now, the first hormone is called growth hormone. What is the other name of growth hormone? We have seen that it is also called somatotropin. We told anterior pituitary will release tropic hormones. So in that manner, you can remember the hormone produced is called somatotropin. It is growth hormone. Pituitary hormones are protein hormones. We can write that means this is a protein hormone. It is protein hormone. And what is the function? It helps in growth of the long bones. Growth of long bones, and this contributes to the growth of the skeletal system, growth of the metabolism and all. Now, this growth hormone which is contributing to growth, if the hormone is produced less, what will happen? If the hormone is produced more, what will happen? Less hormonal secretion is called hyposecretion. More hormonal secretion is called hypersecretion. If the growth hormone is produced less, then it's called hyposecretion. Leads to what? And hypersecretion causes what? Hyposecretion of growth hormone in children. What does it cause? In adult, what does it cause? Hypersecretion of growth hormone in children, what does it cause? And in adult, what does it cause? Hyposecretion. If the growth hormone is not there, growth will not happen properly, the long bones will not grow further, and the child will be dwarf. So we can call it as dwarfism. Hyposecretion of growth hormone in children causes dwarfism. Hyposecretion of growth hormone in adults, it causes Simmons disease. What is it called? It's called Simmons disease. And hypersecretion of the growth hormone in children causes gigantism. What is it called? Gigantism. Hypersecretion, more secretion of growth hormone in adults will cause acromegaly. It causes acromegaly. Since they did not give us the points to study in detail, I am not touching them because the chapter itself is very lengthy. If we talk about each disorder in detail, so then it goes on a lengthy stretch. So we are just telling what's the first hormone produced by anti-pituitary growth hormone. It is also called somatotropin. It is a protein hormone and it permits the growth of the long bones. Hyposecretion in children causes dwarfism. Hypersecretion causes Simmons disease. Hyposecretion of growth hormone in children, hypersecretion will cause gigantism, and hypersecretion in adults will cause acromegaly. Now let us talk about the second hormone. The second hormone is thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. TSH means thyroid stimulating hormone. We know that we need not write, I think, again and again, because all the hypothalamic hormones are protein hormones only. Now this thyroid stimulating hormone goes and acts on the thyroid gland. So it is a protein hormone. It is a protein hormone. It acts on the thyroid gland. It acts on the thyroid gland. So it acts on the thyroid follicles. Then the thyroid follicles will secrete. It will secrete T3 and T4 hormones. When the thyroid stimulating hormone comes and acts on the thyroid gland, then the thyroid gland's thyroid follicles will secrete T3 and T4 hormone. That's it. Now let's talk about the third hormone produced by the anti-pituitary, ACTH. It is called adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. Again, it's a protein hormone. It is a protein hormone. It acts on adrenal cortex. It acts on adrenal cortex. Then the adrenal cortex will release cortical hormones called glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. So, pituitary gland will produce ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. This adrenocorticotropic hormone comes and acts on the adrenal cortex. Then the adrenal cortex will release glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid. Example for glucocorticoid is cortisol. Example for mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. So, over third hormone also. Take a screenshot, then we'll go to the fourth hormone. Yes, we finished growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone. The fourth hormone will be prolactin, fifth will be LH, and sixth will be FSH. Yes. So children, we finished growth hormone. We finished thyroid stimulating hormone. We finished adrenocorticotropic hormone. What is the fourth hormone? The fourth hormone is prolactin. It is also called lactogenic hormone. It helps in milk production. So it's called lactogenic hormone produced by anterior pituitary only. This is a fourth hormone. It is also a protein hormone. Now, prolactin helps in the growth of mammary glands. It helps in the growth of mammary glands. So when the mammary glands will grow, then the milk producing glands, these are milk producing glands, they produce milk. Then the alveoli, the cells of the mammary glands will produce milk. It helps in milk production. After parturition, after delivery, the next period is lactation. During lactation, the mother has to feed the baby. So the mother has to release milk. Then the prolactin hormones levels will be high. So which helps in release of the milk, which helps in milk production. It will synthesize the milk. This is about prolactin. Then the next hormone we told, the fifth hormone is luteinizing hormone. It is luteinizing hormone. Okay. Luteinizing hormone is a gonadotropin. Gonadotropin means it acts on gonads, right? It acts on gonads. Now, what is the action of LH in males? We'll see. And what is the action of LH in females? We will see. Male gonad is testis. LH, it will go to testis, and what it will do? LH will go to ovaries, and what it will do? See, if we see, this is a testis. In the testis, these are the testicular lobes. Inside the testicular lobes, these are seminiferous tubules. These are seminiferous tubules, and this space is called interstitial space. The interstitial space of the testis contains interstitial cells. The interstitial space of testis contain interstitial cells. The interstitial cells are called Leydig cells. The interstitial cells are called Leydig cells. The luteinizing hormone produced by the pituitary comes and acts on these Leydig cells. It comes and acts on the gonad Leydig cells. Then the Leydig cells will produce a male hormone called androgen. The male androgen is called testosterone. So then the Leydig cells will produce a male hormone called testosterone. This testosterone goes into the seminiferous tubule. The testosterone will go into the seminiferous tubule, and the testosterone will help in spermatogenesis, sperm production. It helps in spermatogenesis. So see carefully, the luteinizing hormone produced by the pituitary comes and acts on the male gonad called testis. Inside the testis, testicular lobes are there. Inside the lobes, seminiferous tubules are there. The space between the tubules is called interstitial space, which contains interstitial cells, which are also called Leydig cells. The luteinizing hormone comes and acts on the Leydig cells and makes the Leydig cells to secrete the male sex hormone called androgen. This androgen will go inside and it will produce the male sex hormone called testosterone. It helps in production of sperms. Now coming to action of luteinizing hormone in females. In females, it goes and acts on the ovaries. The female gonad is called ovaries. Now inside the ovaries, if you see, so we have primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, matured Graafian follicle. This is the matured Graafian follicle. So in females, luteinizing hormone helps in rupturing of the Graafian follicle to release the ova, to release the egg. So what will LH do in the females? It helps to rupture. It helps to rupture the Graafian follicle. The Graafian follicle will rupture to release egg. This is called ovulation. Release of egg, release of ova. What is it called? Ovulation. Luteinizing hormone in females helps in ovulation. Not only that, the ruptured Graafian follicle will get converted into temporary endocrine tissue called corpus luteum in the presence of luteinizing hormone only. This is one function. The other function is it converts the ruptured Graafian follicle into corpus luteum. It converts the ruptured Graafian follicle into corpus luteum, which starts secreting progesterone. So this is a function of luteinizing hormone in males and in females. Take a screenshot. We'll talk about follicle stimulating hormone then. Yeah, the last hormone under anterior pituitary is follicle stimulating hormone. That we will see. Then we will go to the middle lobe called melanocyte stimulating hormone then. So ACTH got over, third hormone, fourth hormone prolactin got over, fifth hormone luteinizing hormone got over. Now the sixth hormone is follicle stimulating hormone, which is also a protein hormone. And what will this follicle stimulating hormone do? What is the role of follicle stimulating hormone in males? What is the role of follicle stimulating hormone in the females? In males, follicle stimulating hormone helps in spermiogenesis. In males, follicle stimulating hormone helps in spermiogenesis. What is spermiogenesis? Release of sperms from the Sertoli cells and the seminiferous tubules is called spermiogenesis. Follicle stimulating hormone in males, it helps in spermiogenesis. And follicle stimulating hormone in females helps in development of the follicles. In females, it helps in development of follicles. Means under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone only, primary follicle will become secondary follicle will become tertiary follicle will mature and it becomes Graafian follicle. So this follicular development is happening under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone only. Then I think we finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hormones we finished. Then we'll come to the middle lobe. Pars intermedia secretes one hormone called melanocyte stimulating hormone. Now, what is the role of melanocyte stimulating hormone? Melanocyte stimulating hormone controls pigmentation. Melanocyte stimulating hormone, what it will do? It will control pigmentation. Means the pigment producing cells are called melanocytes. So it has action on melanocytes. So this they found it in mice and rat. In humans, the function of melanocyte stimulating hormone is still not known. In humans, the function of melanocyte stimulating hormone is still not known. In animals, in experimental animals, it's acting on the melanocytes and it controls the pigmentation. With this, we finished middle lobe also. Now let's talk about the posterior pituitary releasing hormones called oxytocin and vasopressin. The first one is oxytocin. The first posterior pituitary hormone is oxytocin, which is also called pitocin. It is also called pitocin. It is a nanopeptide made up of 9 amino acids. So oxytocin is called nanopeptide hormone. Actually, oxytocin is a hypothalamic hormone. Oxytocin is hypothalamic hormone. Hypothalamic hormone, it comes and stores in the pituitary gland. Comes and stores in posterior pituitary. It comes and stores in posterior pituitary. From the posterior pituitary, it will be released. Now, what is the role of action of oxytocin? Oxytocin acts on the smooth muscles. So, the role of oxytocin in females is it will contract the smooth muscles of uterus during delivery. It contracts the smooth muscles of uterus and helps in parturition, delivery, childbirth. And one more thing it will do, at the time of lactation, it contracts the smooth muscles of the mammary gland. It contracts the smooth muscles of mammary gland and helps in ejection of the milk, release of milk. So oxytocin, it helps in release of the child, it helps in release of the milk. So its action is on the smooth muscles. Next hormone is vasopressin. Next hormone is vasopressin. Vasopressin, so it is also called antidiuretic hormone. It's also called ADH. Vasopressin is also called antidiuretic hormone. So what will vasopressin do? Diuresis means diluted urine. Antidiuretic means concentrated urine. So vasopressin, which is antidiuretic hormone, so it acts on the nephron, right? It acts on the distal convoluted tubule of nephron. It acts on the collecting ducts of nephron and it helps in reabsorption of water. It reabsorbs the water from the DCT and the collecting ducts and it helps to concentrate the urine. It helps to concentrate the urine. That is the function of vasopressin, which is also nanopeptide, which is also hypothalamic hormone, which will come and store in the posterior pituitary. And deficiency of vasopressin, antidiuretic hormone, will cause a disease called diabetes insipidus. So deficiency of vasopressin causes diabetes insipidus. Deficiency of insulin will cause diabetes mellitus. Deficiency of vasopressin will cause diabetes insipidus. Now what happens in diabetes insipidus? Vasopressin hormone is deficient. Then the urine will not get concentrated. Diluted urine will pass off. Because of diluted urine, water content will get reduced, mineral content will get reduced, which is considered as diabetes insipidus. So take a screenshot. With this, we finished. What did we finish? We finished hypothalamic hormones, we finished pituitary hormones, then we will talk about pineal gland also. Pineal gland is also located in the brain only, on the dorsal side of the forebrain only. Pineal gland will secrete a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin has many functions. Let us see that. So here they have written this is pineal gland. Okay. So next gland is pineal gland. So where is located? It is located on the dorsal side of forebrain, and it secretes one hormone called melatonin. Now melatonin, what does it controls? 24 hours clock, body clock it will control. Pineal gland will control 24 hours body clock. So then what do we call it as? We call it as diurnal rhythm. We call it a sleep wake cycle. Melatonin will control our 24 hours body clock, which is called diurnal rhythm, or we also call it as sleep wake cycle. So it will control how many hours to sleep, how many hours to wake up, daytime to sleep, daytime to wake up, and nighttime to sleep. All that control is under melatonin only. Apart from this function, what are the other diversified functions melatonin will also do? Means it will control defense mechanism, it will control menstruation, it will control pigmentation, it controls metabolism, it controls body temperature. The main function is circadian rhythm, diurnal rhythm, sleep wake cycle. Our body cycle is controlled by the pineal gland, which is located on the dorsal side of the forebrain. The other functions are, it controls our body temperature, it controls our metabolism, it even controls pigmentation, it is responsible for menstrual cycle, and it can control the defense capability also. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the additional functions what pineal gland can do, but the main function is sleep wake cycle, diurnal rhythm it will control. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about the next gland called thyroid gland. The next endocrine gland is thyroid gland. So we discussed that pituitary gland is the smallest endocrine gland and thyroid gland is the largest endocrine gland. And where is thyroid gland located? Here, above the trachea it is located. If we see, this is trachea, here is vocal cord. So above the trachea on either sides, like a butterfly shaped gland it is, a H shaped gland it is. And how much it measures? 25 grams it measures, and that's the reason we call it as a biggest endocrine gland. So thyroid gland, it is the largest endocrine gland, measures 25 grams. It is on the ventral side. So on the ventral side only we can see the thyroid gland. On the dorsal side, in NCERT also they have given this picture and they wrote on the ventral side we can find thyroid gland. On the dorsal side if you see, parathyroid gland will be there. So these are parathyroid glands. 4 parathyroid glands will be there. Parathyroid glands we can see on the dorsal side, whereas thyroid gland we can see on the ventral side. So it is seen on the ventral side, it is seen on the lateral sides, and it is present above the trachea, upper part of the trachea, at the neck region it is present. The color of the thyroid gland, it is brownish red in color, and it is highly vascularized. It is supplied with blood vessels, and it is a shield like structure. It's covering the trachea on either sides like a shield like structure. It is bilobed, it is butterfly shaped gland, shield gland. All these are the names what we give for thyroid gland. Both the lobes are connected by a transverse band which is called isthmus. This lobe and this lobe are connected by a transverse band which is called isthmus. Because of the presence of the isthmus, it appears like a H-shaped gland, butterfly shaped gland, right? And the thyroid gland is covered by a fibrous tissue. Inside the thyroid gland, if you see there, we have drawn small follicles. They're called thyroid follicles. The thyroid follicles, inside the thyroid follicles, acinar cells will be there. Those acinar cells, under the influence of thyroid stimulating hormone, will secrete thyroid hormone called T3 and T4. That's what I wrote here. Inside, if we see, there are 3 million thyroid follicles. So each one is a thyroid follicle. How many thyroid follicles are there? 3 million thyroid follicles will be there. Where are they present? They are present in the stroma. Now this, inside the thyroid follicles, there are two types of cells. The thyroid follicle is surrounded by acinar cells. The acinar cells will secrete T3, T4 hormones. Outside the thyroid follicles in the stroma are parafollicular cells. Parafollicular cells will secrete calcitonin. So the follicles contains acinar cells. Acinar cells will secrete T3 and T4 hormones. Triiodothyroxine and tetraiodothyroxine. Tetraiodothyroxine is only called as thyronin. It is secreted by the follicular acinar cells. Whereas in the stroma, parafollicular cells are suspended. The parafollicular cells will secrete calcitonin. They will secrete calcitonin. And how much amount of T3 hormone is produced? How much amount of T4 hormone is produced? T3 hormone is produced only 10%. T4 hormone is produced 90%. So T3 is secreted to 10% level only. T4 is secreted 90%. But T3, even though it is secreted 10%, it is 3 to 4 times more potent than the T4 hormone, triiodothyroxine. Right? T3 is 3 to 4 times active than T4. How will you synthesize T3 and T4, which are called thyroid hormones? They are synthesized by adding iodine to an amino acid called tyrosine. To tyrosine, if you add 3 iodine molecules, you will get T3 hormone. For that, if you add 4 iodine molecules, you will get T4 hormone. T4 hormone is called thyroxine. Thyroxine, how much percent is produced? 90% is produced. But who is more active? T3 is more active. 3 to 4 times it is more active when compared to T4 hormones. So we told it's the largest endocrine gland. It is seen on the ventral side. It is seen on the lateral sides. It is seen above the trachea, and it is a shield-shaped gland, butterfly-shaped gland, head-shaped gland, and both the lobes are bilobed gland. Both the lobes are connected by a transverse band called as isthmus. And then the thyroid gland is covered by a fibrous capsule. Inside, if we see, there are 3 million follicles. The follicles are surrounded by follicular acinar cells which secrete T3, T4 hormones. Suspended in the stroma are parafollicular cells. Parafollicular cells will secrete another hormone called calcitonin. Calcitonin is calcium metabolism related hormone. Calcium levels will be decreased by calcitonin. Means calcitonin is a hypocalcemic hormone. We will talk about calcitonin later. First, let us talk about thyroid hormone. Now, what are the functions of thyroid hormone? See, thyroid hormone will control our BMR. What is BMR? Means basal metabolic rate. Now, what is meant by basal metabolic rate? Means when we are in deep sleep, then also metabolism is going on to maintain us in a alive state. Our heart is beating, our brain is working, all our organs are functional. So the minimum metabolism which is required for the body to sustain is called as basal metabolism, basal metabolic rate. Now, who is regulating the basal metabolism? Means thyroid hormone is regulating the basal metabolism. How it will regulate the basal metabolism? Means by controlling carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism, and fat metabolism. By controlling these 3 metabolisms, it will control the basal metabolic rate. Not only thyroid hormone is controlling carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism, it also controls water metabolism also and electrolyte metabolism also. Water metabolism means it increases the urine output. It helps in absorption of more minerals. Not only that, we wrote it regulates BMR. Then it regulates carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism, fat metabolism. It maintains homeothermy. It maintains constant temperature. We are warm-blooded animals. If our BMR is maintained, so we are homeothermal only. Our body temperature is also maintained. Now it maintains water and electrolyte balance in the body. Then it controls tissue differentiation and metamorphosis. So the tadpole larva, in the presence of thyroxine hormone only, it undergoes metamorphosis and it becomes adult frog. It supports RBC formation also. So RBC is a transporter molecule. Since it's related to metabolism, thyroid hormone also helps in RBC production, and it controls urine output. It controls urine output. It increases urine output. So I think 7 functions we wrote for thyroid hormone. Basal metabolism it will control. Carbohydrate, protein, fat metabolism it will control. Then it maintains body temperature. It also maintains water and electrolyte balance. It controls tissue differentiation and it converts the tadpole larva into adult stage. And not only that, it controls the urine output also, and it supports RBC formation. All these are the functions of thyroid hormone. Now coming to hyposecretion of thyroid hormone, what disorders are coming? Hypersecretion of thyroid hormone, what disorders are coming? Hyposecretion of thyroid hormone in children will cause cretinism. Hyposecretion of thyroid hormone in adults will cause myxedema. Hyposecretion of thyroid hormone in children will cause cretinism. Cretinism means what happens? BMR is reduced, heartbeat is reduced, blood pressure is reduced, their IQ is reduced, their mental ability is reduced, skin has dry skin, disorders, deafness will be there, they can't speak properly. Okay, so that's what. So in children, what type of symptoms we see when a person is having cretinism means BMR will be reduced, if metabolism is not there, growth will get stunted, then retarded mental growth, retarded IQ, skin will become dry, they can't hear, they can't speak, heartbeat reduces, pulse reduces, cardiac output reduces, urine output reduces, blood pressure reduces, pulse rate reduces. This is for a child. For an adult, hyposecretion of thyroid hormone leads to myxedema. Even the menstrual cycle also will get disturbed. It will not be in a perfect cycle in myxedema in adults. Now what is hypersecretion? Now if there is cancer for the thyroid gland, if there is cancer for the thyroid gland, then what happens? More thyroid follicles will be made. If more thyroid follicles are made, then more thyroid hormone will be made. So if more thyroid hormone is made, then it's called hypersecretion. Hypersecretion in children, it causes exophthalmic goiter. Not in children, in adults it causes exophthalmic goiter. What do you mean by exophthalmos? Edema inside the eye. The eyes will swell, the eyeballs will protrude and come out like a ghost. The eyeballs will protrude, it gives a scary appearance. So it's called Graves' disease also. So the eyes will swell because of edema, the eyelids and all will swell, eyeballs will protrude and they will come out, and the BMR will be increased, body temperature increased, heartbeat increased, pulse rate increased, and water and electrolyte balance, it gets disturbed. So then what happens? Pores on the bone. So osteoporosis will happen. This is called as exophthalmic goiter. It's called Graves' disease, which is due to hypersecretion of thyroid hormone. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about the calcium regulating thyroid hormone, which is called calcitonin. This we will talk. Take a screenshot. Right. Now the other hormone which is secreted by thyroid gland is called calcitonin. That we will talk now. After that we will talk about parathyroid gland, which is seen on the dorsal side, which secretes parathyroid hormone, which is also related to calcium metabolism only. Right. So we finished thyroid hormone T3 and T4. So we told T3 is synthesized less, but T3 is more potent than T4, and all the 7 functions of thyroid hormone we listed. Now the parafollicular cells will secrete a calcium regulating hormone called calcitonin. So thyroid gland contains parafollicular cells, which are also called C cells. They are suspended in stroma and they secrete, parafollicular cells will secrete a hormone called PTH, parathyroid hormone. They secrete parathyroid hormone, which is a peptide hormone. This is a parathyroid hormone, is a peptide hormone, and parathyroid hormone regulates calcium metabolism. Means, will it increase the calcium level or decrease the calcium level? It is hypocalcemic hormone. Hypocalcemic hormone means it reduces the calcium levels in the blood. it decreases the calcium levels in the blood. How it will decrease the calcium levels in the blood means from the blood it will take the calcium, gives it to the bone and promotes mineralization. Means from the blood calcium goes off, it will get deposited on the bone, and from the urinary tubules it will not reabsorb calcium, it will allow the calcium to go in, to come out in urine. So it is hypocalcemic. What it will do, from blood calcium is sent to bones for mineralization. Bone will do mineralization. This is one function. In that manner it is removing calcium from the blood. Next one, so it will decrease calcium reabsorption. It will decrease calcium reabsorption from the urine, so that calcium will go out in urine. So allowing the calcium to go out in urine, allowing the calcium to go and mineralization, the calcium levels will become less in the blood. So that's why we call calcitonin is a hypocalcemic hormone. So this is the information about calcitonin secreted by the parathyroid cells, which are also called C cells, which are there in the stroma. They are hypocalcemic. Then take a screenshot. We'll talk about this parathyroid gland also. Yes. Now we will talk about parathyroid gland. Seen on the dorsal side or ventral side? Parathyroid gland is seen on the dorsal side. Parathyroid gland. So where are parathyroid gland present? They are seen on the back side. They are seen on the dorsal side of the thyroid gland. They are seen on the back side. They are seen on the dorsal side of thyroid gland. And how many parathyroid glands are there? 4 parathyroid glands are there. 4 parathyroid glands are there. 2 in each lobe. Now here 2 are there, here 2 are there. In each lobe 2 are there. So total 4 parathyroid glands are there. Now parathyroid glands, what is the shape? They are oval shape, they are small, they are yellow colored spherical structures. They are oval to spherical, they are small, yellow colored endocrine glands seen on the dorsal side. And what does it secrete? Parathyroid gland secretes parathyroid hormone, which is also a peptide hormone. Parathyroid hormone has a role in calcium metabolism. Now calcitonin also has a role in calcium metabolism. Calcitonin is hypocalcemic, means it decreases calcium levels in the blood. It is opposite. That means parathyroid hormone is hypercalcemic. Parathyroid hormone is hypercalcemic. Hypercalcemic means it will increase calcium levels in blood. So from where will it bring the calcium to the blood? So it will go to the intestine, it will absorb more calcium from the intestinal glands, and it will go to the urinary bladder, and from there, from the nephron also it will absorb calcium. From the bone also it will reabsorb the bone, from there also it will take off calcium. So from where it will take? So it will absorb calcium. It increases calcium absorption at intestinal cells. From the intestinal cells it will absorb more and more calcium. So it will promote bone reabsorption. It will demineralize the bone. From the bone it takes out calcium, gives it to the blood, and from the urine also it will reabsorb the bone. It helps in reabsorption of calcium from the urine. By doing all these three things, it will increase the calcium levels in the blood. So that is why it is called hypercalcemic hormone. What is it? Parathyroid hormone. It is secreted by parathyroid gland. It is seen on the dorsal side. How many glands are there? 4 glands are there. So by increasing the calcium level in the blood, what functions will the parathyroid hormone do? What are the functions? Why it wants calcium? Why it wants calcium? Calcium is required for blood clotting. Calcium is required for muscle contraction. Calcium is required for nerve impulse conduction. Calcium is required for bone and teeth formation. For all these things, calcium is required. So what it will do? So it helps in muscle contraction. It also helps in nerve impulse transmission. It helps in bone and teeth formation. Right? Muscle contraction, nerve impulse formation, blood clotting. It promotes blood clotting, blood coagulation. So it will do all these functions. Children, this is the information about parathyroid gland. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about the next endocrine gland, which is there in NCERT. It's called thymus. Yes, in the picture we can see where is thymus located. We discussed that hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland are with the brain only. Then afterwards we discussed what is the fourth hormone we discussed. I think thyroid gland only. Thyroid gland, where it's located? Here at the neck region, above the trachea it is located. Butterfly shaped gland. Here we can see this butterfly shaped gland is thyroid gland. Now we have to talk about thymus. Where is thymus located? Here near the heart thymus is located. So what is thymus? Thymus is soft pinkish lymphoid tissue concerned with immunity, concerned with defense mechanism, because thymus produces a hormone called thymosin, and thymosin is responsible for T lymphocyte production. T lymphocytes are responsible for cell mediated immunity. So that's why I am telling thymus is a lymphoid tissue. It is soft, it is pink, it is also bilobed. It's a mass of lymphoid tissue present just above the heart. So next organ is thymus. So it is soft, pinkish, bilobed. It's a mass of lymphoid tissue. It is a mass of lymphoid tissue located just above the heart. It is located just above the heart. Now the thymus is present, it is big at the time of birth itself. At the time of birth itself it is big. Now from birth to puberty, it undergoes regression. Means it starts decreasing in size. At birth itself it is maximum in size. From birth to puberty it undergoes regression, means it decreases in size. Now at old age it is very, very small and it becomes inactive. That's why old age people doesn't have any immunity, because thymus is only not there. So thymus, the peculiarity of thymus is at birth itself it is big, and at birth all other organs are small, and from the birth till puberty when they are growing, but this thymus which is big at puberty, from birth till the adolescence period it decreases, and afterwards it will be maintained. At old age it becomes inactive only, right? And this thymus secretes a peptide hormone called thymosin. The thymus, it secretes a peptide hormone. What is the name of the peptide hormone? Thymus secretes a peptide hormone called thymosin. And this thymosin is responsible for development of T lymphocytes. It helps in development of T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes are responsible for which type of immunity? Cell-mediated immunity. So thymosin helps in the development of T lymphocyte, maturation of the T lymphocyte, and it is responsible for cell-mediated immunity, CMI we call in short. Not only that, so thymosin helps T helper cell. T helper cell helps in development of B lymphocytes also. There are different types of T cells. One T cell is called T helper cell. T helper cell will help in development of B lymphocyte. B lymphocyte is responsible for humoral immunity, antibody mediated immunity. So thymosin also has role in antibody mediated immunity. Not only cell mediated immunity, it also has role in antibody mediated immunity, which is also called humoral immunity. Means altogether we can tell thymus has role in defense mechanism. It has role in defense mechanism. In old age, the thymus organ will be very much atrophied. It's very much small. That's why old age people, they don't have any resistance. They're easily susceptible for diseases. Where is thymus located? Above the heart. It is located. Take a screenshot. We'll go to the next endocrine gland called adrenal gland. So the next gland is adrenal gland. So in the starting only we discussed that vertebrates endocrine system is complex. Many glands are there, many hormones are there, and many functions it will do. One by one we are doing. So the next next gland is called adrenal gland. It is also called suprarenal gland. Why are we calling it a suprarenal gland? Means it is present on the kidney, on top of kidney. One on top of each kidney it is present. Here we can see kidney. On top of kidney, this mass is the suprarenal gland called adrenal gland. Okay. So this adrenal gland, one pair, it is yellow colored pyramid shaped structures. If this is the kidney, on top of that, here is a adrenal gland. So it is one pair, one on each kidney, yellowish pyramid shaped structures. It is pyramid shaped gland. Outer portion of the adrenal gland is called adrenal cortex. Inner portion is called adrenal medulla. This outer portion is adrenal cortex, and this outer portion, inner portion, is adrenal medulla. So there are so many differences between adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. We'll see those differences. Adrenal cortex produces separate hormones. Adrenal medulla also produces separate hormones. Now, adrenal cortex occupies 70 to 75% of the volume of the cell, whereas adrenal medulla occupies 20 to 25% proportion only. Right? And adrenal cortex, what does it secrete? What is its color? Bright yellow color. Whereas adrenal medulla, what is the color? Reddish brown in color. So the color is bright brown in color, and this is reddish brown. I think this is yellow. Cortex is yellow and medulla is brown in color. Adrenal cortex is a peripheral part. Adrenal medulla is the inner part. Adrenal cortex is the peripheral region of the adrenal gland, and this is the inner region of adrenal gland. And adrenal cortex is which dermal? Adrenal medulla is which dermal? Adrenal cortex is mesodermal. Adrenal medulla is ectodermal in origin. Adrenal cortex is mesodermal in origin. Adrenal medulla is ectodermal in origin. Adrenal cortex contains 3 types of cells. Adrenal cortex is further differentiated. It's made up of 3 types of cells. The outermost cells are called the outer zone. You can call it zona glomerulosa. The middle zone is called zona fasciculata. And the inner zone is called zona reticularis. So the adrenal cortex is further differentiated into outer zona glomerulosa, middle zona fasciculata, inner zona reticularis, whereas adrenal medulla is no further differentiated. It is not further differentiated. It's not further differentiated. How to remember this means we can make a code called GFR. So G for glomerulosa, F for fasciculata, R for reticularis. In that way we can remember. So adrenal cortex produces two types of hormones called glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. It also produces sex corticoids. Okay, so it produces three types of hormones. Adrenal cortex produces glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids and sex corticoids. Glucocorticoids, example of glucocorticoid is cortisol. Example of mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. And sex corticoid is sex corticoid only. We can take it as androgen. Now coming to adrenal medullary hormones. Adrenal medullary hormones are two. One is called as epinephrine. The other one is called norepinephrine. Epinephrine is also called adrenaline, right? And this is noradrenaline. Adrenal medulla produces two types of hormones called epinephrine and norepinephrine. Adrenal cortex produces three types of hormones called glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids and sex corticoids. So the hormones produced by adrenal cortex are steroid hormones. The hormones produced by adrenal medulla are amine hormones. They are called catecholamines. They are called catecholamine hormones. Now adrenal cortex, how does it release this? Means adrenal cortex releases the hormones when the pituitary gland releases ACTH. So adrenal cortical hormones are under the influence of ACTH. Whereas adrenal medullary hormones, fight and flight hormones, they are released under the influence of somatic nervous system. This will be released under the influence of pituitary gland, adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Whereas adrenal medulla will release epinephrine, norepinephrine under fight and flight condition. So under somatic nervous system. Means we can tell this is not associated with somatic nervous system and adrenal medulla is associated with somatic nervous system. It is not associated with nervous system, somatic nervous system, whereas adrenal medulla is associated. It is associated with somatic nervous system. So children, the differences between adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla are very much important. Adrenal gland is called suprarenal gland. It is present on top of the kidneys. It is a pyramid shaped structure. It is yellow color structure. One pair are present. Outer region cortex, inner region medulla. Cortex occupies 70 to 75% of volume. Medulla occupies 20 to 25% only. What is the color of the cortex? Bright yellow. This is reddish brown. Peripheral region, inner region. Mesodermal origin, ectodermal origin. Differentiated into GFR, glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Not differentiated. Produces three types of hormones called glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, sex corticoids. Produces two types of hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine. This is under the influence of anterior pituitary hormone called ACTH. This is under the influence of somatic nervous system. Means it's not associated with nervous system. That is associated with nervous system. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about glucocorticoids in detail. What are the functions? Here is adrenal gland, which is on the anterior part of the kidney. If this is kidney, on the anterior part of the kidney, this is the pyramid shaped adrenal gland located. And adrenal gland's outer portion, peripheral portion is called cortex. Inner portion is called medulla. Now this is the outer portion which is called cortex. And here is the inner portion which is called medulla. Cortex is differentiated into three regions. The outermost region of the cortex, which I draw the green line here, is called as zona glomerulosa, and the middle layer is called as zona fasciculata, which I represented by blue color, and the innermost layer is called a zona reticularis, which we draw with black region. So the outermost region, the peripheral region of the adrenal gland, is called cortex. Cortex is having three regions. The outer region is called glomerulosa, middle region is called fasciculata, inner region is called reticularis. You can remember this like GFR. We can make a code called GFR. G for glomerulosa, F for fasciculata, R for reticularis, right? Now, we will talk about adrenal cortex and then we will go to adrenal medulla. So, adrenal cortex is having three regions as we discussed: glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Now, what are the hormones produced by adrenal cortex? Means the outermost region, zona glomerulosa, secretes mineralocorticoids which will regulate mineral metabolism. The middle region, zona fasciculata, will secrete glucocorticoids which regulate carbohydrate and glucose metabolism. The third one is zona reticularis, which secrete sex steroids, adrenosteroids, right children? So we can remember, we know we made a code called GFR, and again, how will you remember that? Like glomerulosa secretes which hormones, fasciculata secretes which hormones, like that you can remember. Glomerulosa, general manager, if you remember, glomerulosa secretes mineralocorticoid, general manager, glomerulosa secretes mineralocorticoids. Then the next one, fasciculata will secrete glucocorticoids. The third one, sex corticoids will secrete. So first let us talk about mineralocorticoids. We told mineralocorticoids, they regulate the mineral metabolism. So what is a predominant mineralocorticoid? Means aldosterone. Aldosterone is a predominant mineralocorticoid and it's a steroid hormone. Classification of hormones, when we have seen protein and peptide hormones, steroid hormones, amino acid derived hormones. Here this aldosterone comes under which category? It's a steroid hormone. Now, when will the mineralocorticoid be secreted by the glomerulosa cells? Means when the sodium levels in the blood drops down, then the pituitary gland will secrete, anterior pituitary will secrete ACTH. ACTH comes and acts on adrenal cortex, comes and acts on zona glomerulosa to secrete aldosterone. Now this aldosterone, what it will do to increase the sodium levels in the blood, we will see. Understood children? So when is mineralocorticoid aldosterone secreted? Means when the sodium levels are low. When the sodium levels are low, then the pituitary gland, anterior lobe of pituitary, will secrete ACTH. This ACTH comes and acts on adrenal cortex. Then the adrenal cortex glomerulosa cells will secrete aldosterone. Then how does aldosterone functions to increase the sodium levels in the blood? Means from the nephron, from the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting ducts, it will reabsorb the sodium. So from the urinary filtrate, if it is reabsorbing the sodium, that comes to the blood only. Vasa recta will take it. So it increases. This is a symbol for increase. It increases sodium reabsorption from the nephron, from the DCT portion, from the nephric filtrate, and it gives to the blood. And that means it is hypernatremic hormone. If it is increasing the sodium levels in the blood, then we should call it as a hypernatremic hormone. It will absorb sodium, in turn it has to give potassium. So means it decreases sodium levels, decreases potassium levels in the blood. When it is taking off sodium, it has to give potassium. So then what it is doing, from the blood it's taking potassium, giving it to the urinary filtrate, nephric filtrate, and from the nephric filtrate it's taking sodium and giving it to the blood. So means it is hypernatremic because it is increasing the sodium levels. Because it is decreasing the potassium levels, it is hypocalemic. So I wrote here, I think, if the potassium levels are low in the blood, then we use a term called hypocalemic. When the sodium levels are increased in the blood, then it's called hypernatremic hormone it is. And so where is sodium present? Sodium is present in saliva, sweat, tears. So this aldosterone will not allow the sodium to go and make too much of saliva, sweat and tears. So it decreases the sodium levels in the sweat, saliva and tears, thus thereby increasing the sodium levels in the blood. This is another function. So since it is retaining salt in the blood, we call it as salt retaining hormone. Aldosterone is a salt retaining hormone. Now we know the concept like when the solute concentration is more, when the salt concentration is more, water will follow immediately to maintain the osmotic balance. So it maintains solute concentration in the blood, it maintains osmotic balance in the blood. Osmotic pressure in the blood means it controls water and electrolyte balance. In simple we can tell. So what it will do, mineralocorticoid example aldosterone will control water and electrolyte balance in the blood. That's what I wrote. Aldosterone is called salt retaining hormone. It will retain the salt. When it is retaining salt, when the solute concentration increases, then the water flows, then osmotic pressure will be created. So thus it increases the salt concentration, thereby it increases water concentration also. That is why it is called as, it controls water and electrolyte balance. All this is the information about aldosterone, which is a steroid hormone which is secreted by zona glomerulosa. Now if the aldosterone levels are low, hyposecretion. If the aldosterone levels are high, hypersecretion. Hyposecretion leads to which disease? Edison's disease. In the starting of the chapter, we studied that Thomas Edison is called father of endocrinology because he studied Edison's disease. So Edison's disease is due to hyposecretion of adrenal cortical hormones. Which cortical hormone? Mineralocorticoid, right? So hyposecretion of aldosterone causes Edison's disease. Now in Edison's disease, what happens? Skin appears in bronze color. That is one symptom we can see in Edison's disease. And since this is related to increasing the sodium levels in the blood, when that is not there, sodium levels will drop down, water levels will drop down, potassium levels will increase. So hyponatremia, sodium levels are hypo, hyperkalemia, potassium levels are hyper. Now sodium, it is required for nerves activity, so now nerves weakness will be there. Then nausea, vomiting, fatigue. These are the symptoms during weakness, right? Nausea will be there, fatigue will be there, vomiting will be there, and because sodium is related to blood pressure also drops down, and then excretion of sodium and more water in the urine. Since it removes the sodium from the urinary filtrate, now this is not there, the levels are low, that means sodium comes out in the urine, water comes out in the urine. All these are the symptoms for Edison's disease. Edison's disease is due to hyposecretion of aldosterone. So then sodium levels will go low, potassium levels will go high, skin becomes bronze color, sodium gets excreted in the urine, so nerves become weaker, it leads to vomiting, fatigue and nausea. That's it. Now let's talk about hypersecretion. Hypersecretion of aldosterone causes Cushing syndrome. Hypersecretion of aldosterone causes Cushing syndrome. All opposites we need to write here. Here blood pressure becomes low means because of more sodium. Hypersecretion means more sodium will be there. So then it causes rise in BP, rise in blood volume, hypernatremia, sodium levels will be very high, hypokalemia, then here muscle becomes weak, here nerves become weak, there muscles become weak. So this is about mineralocorticoid aldosterone. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about the hormone secreted by the zona fasciculata, which is called as glucocorticoid, that we will talk. Take a screenshot. Right. Now let us talk about the next hormone, which is secreted by the middle layer in the cortex. What is that? Zona fasciculata. It secretes glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids means it is related to carbohydrate metabolism. Now mineralocorticoid is increasing mineral level in the blood. That means glucocorticoid will increase glucose levels in the blood. What are the functions it will do to raise the glucose levels in the blood? We will see. Now in NCERT they labeled this as kidney, and this they label it as adrenal gland, and this portion which is overlapped they label this as fat. This is fat, right? And this is renal artery and renal vein they have given here. Now when we talk about glucocorticoids, now in mineralocorticoids, we told the predominant mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. In the same manner, in glucocorticoid, there are different forms of glucocorticoid, but cortisol is a main glucocorticoid. Cortisol is there, cortisone is there, and corticosteroid are also there, but among which cortisol is a major one. So if you have to give examples of glucocorticoids, 95% of the glucocorticoids belong to cortisol only. That's why we told cortisol is a predominant one. Corticosterone is also there. Cortisol is there, corticosterone is there, and corticosteroid is also there. Now, all these three hormones, they're related to carbohydrate metabolism. They regulate, they increase the glucose concentration in the blood. They regulate carbohydrate metabolism, or they regulate glucose metabolism. Now, as I told you, they need to increase the glucose levels in the blood. So, how do they increase the glucose levels in the blood? How does it functions means? So, come on, tell me, if it has to increase glucose, then it will do gluconeogenesis. What do you mean by gluconeogenesis? Synthesizing glucose from non-carbohydrate sources like fatty acids, amino acids is called gluconeogenesis. The first function is it synthesizes glucose by a process called gluconeogenesis. It increases gluconeogenesis. So genesis means synthesis, new means from new sources. So glucose, synthesizing glucose from new sources like fats and amino acids is called gluconeogenesis. For doing gluconeogenesis, it needs amino acids, it needs fatty acids. How does it get? So lipolysis it will do. When it breaks lipid, it gets fatty acids. When it breaks proteins, it gets amino acids. That amino acids and fatty acids are converted to glucose. That means it increases lipolysis. Lysis of lipid, when it do, we get fatty acids. That fatty acids will be converted to glucose. In the same manner, it increases proteolysis. When you break protein, what do you get? You get amino acids. That amino acids are also used for gluconeogenesis, right? So then it will not allow the amino acids, the fatty acids and glucose to be taken out by the cell. That means it decreases the cellular uptake. If the cell takes it off, then again in the glucose the concentration will go low. So it decreases the cellular uptake of fatty acids, amino acids and glucose, thus maintaining the levels of glucose in the blood itself. It decreases cellular uptake of glucose, amino acids and fatty acids, right children? In this manner, by increasing the synthesis of glucose from new sources, by breaking fatty acids, by breaking proteins, by decreasing the cellular uptake, it maintains the glucose levels in the blood, increased glucose levels in the blood. And it is anti-inflammatory also. Suppose for example an inflammation comes, and when we go to the hospital, the doctor immediately they'll give one cortisol injection. Means cortisol is anti-inflammatory. That means it suppresses the inflammation by suppressing the immune system. Next function we can tell it is anti-inflammatory. What do you mean by anti-inflammatory? So it will suppress the inflammation by suppressing the immune system. Means it suppresses immune system. This is another function. Not only anti-inflammatory, we can tell it is anti-allergic also. Means it reduces allergy, it reduces inflammation. Not only that, it maintains the cardiovascular system and it maintains the kidney functioning also. Since it is associated with kidney only, it can control kidney functioning, it can control cardiovascular system. That is also the function. The first function is increasing the glucose levels by doing all these things. The second function is acting as an anti-inflammatory agent. The second function is acting as an anti-allergic agent. Fourth function, we are telling it maintains cardiovascular system and kidney functioning. So it maintains two systems. The first one is cardiovascular system. It also maintains kidney functioning. Not only that, it has role in RBC formation also. It stimulates RBC production also. That is the fifth function. So we can tell cortisol, it stimulates RBC production. So these are the functions of cortisol. Cortisol is secreted by zona fasciculata. There are three types of cortisol. There are three types of glucocorticoids, but cortisol is a predominant one. Its role is related to carbohydrate metabolism, increasing the glucose levels by doing all these things. Apart from that, anti-inflammatory, anti-allergic, maintaining heart and maintaining kidneys and stimulating the RBC production. All these are the other functions. Now, next one is hyposecretion of glucocorticoid is not there. That disorder is not there. But hypersecretion is there. We will see hypersecretion of cortisol leads to what? Hypersecretion of cortisol causes a disease called Cushing Syndrome. it causes Cushing's syndrome. Now, if we see the Cushing syndrome, the person will be having edema in the face will swell, eyes will swell, neck will swell, hands will swell. This is of edema. So we can tell here there is swollen face is there, swollen neck is there, swollen hands are there in Cushing syndrome. The symptoms, if we have to tell, we are telling swollen face, neck and hands. Since the secretion of this hormone cortisol is more, it increases more and more glucose, so the blood glucose levels will be high, that much high that the glucose gets excreted in urine also. This also we can see. And sudden weight loss also is observed in Cushing syndrome. So weight loss will be there. So all these are the symptoms of Cushing syndrome. So we finished the first hormone, mineralocorticoid, aldosterone, which is a steroid hormone. Now we finished the glucocorticoid, which is also steroid hormone. Now talking about zona reticularis, which secreted sex corticoids. Sex corticoids examples are androgenic steroids. Take a screenshot. We will continue about that also. Now the third hormone secreted by the adrenal cortex is sex steroids, secreted by zona reticularis. That is also a steroidal hormone only. Now the examples, actually we think that they are secreted by gonads only, but here the zona reticularis has also the ability to secrete sex steroids. So the examples of sex steroids, there are two sex steroids. Aldosterone is one example of sex steroid, and another example is aldosterone. So these sex steroids, which are secreted by the zona reticularis cells, what do? They control the secondary sexual characters in people. It controls, what does it control? Secondary sexual characters like development of axial hair, development of pubic hair during puberty, development of facial hair. So such type of secondary sexual characters are controlled by the sex steroids secreted by zona reticularis. So two types of sex steroids are there. What are they? Androstenedione and another one is androsterone is there. These are also steroid hormones only. With this, children, we finished adrenal cortex. Now we need to talk about adrenal medulla. Take a screenshot. We'll talk about adrenal medulla. So now let's talk about adrenal medulla. Cortical hormones we finished. Adrenal medulla produces two hormones called adrenaline and non-adrenaline. So it produces two hormones. What are the two hormones? Adrenaline and noradrenaline. It is also called epinephrine, norepinephrine. It's called epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are the two hormones produced by adrenal medulla. And what are these hormones? They are amino acid derived hormones. They are amine hormones. So these two are examples of amine hormones, or we can tell they are examples of amino acid derived hormones. You know, there is an amino acid called catechol. They are derived from an amino acid called catechol. That is why epinephrine, non-epinephrines are called catecholamines. Since they are derived from catechol, they are called catecholamines. Now, both epinephrine and non-epinephrine, what do? They prepare the body to become alert, to combat the stress during the emergency, what changes we need to do. So since it is making our body alert for emergency, for fight, for flight, we call them as emergency hormones. We call them as fight and flight hormones, right? So we are talking about adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla secretes two hormones called adrenaline and non-adrenaline. What are the cells of the adrenal medulla which will secrete these hormones? Means the cells are called chromaffin cells. Adrenal medulla contains cells called chromaffin cells. These chromaffin cells of adrenal medulla will secrete these hormones, and since they are derived from catechol, they are called catecholamines. Both these hormones, so what do? They prepare us for stress. They prepare the body to overcome the stress. Since they prepare the body to overcome the stress, we call them as emergency hormones. We also call them as fight and flight hormones. They will prepare you how to fight, they'll prepare you how to fly, they'll prepare you how to combat during emergency situations. That's why they're called emergency hormones. Now, when you are very much anger, your heartbeat will increase, your blood pressure will increase, your breathing rate will increase, and then your respiratory rate will increase, your basal metabolism will increase. For fight, we need energy, your glucose levels will increase. From where do you get glucose? Proteolysis will happen, lipolysis will happen, pupillary dilation will be there, then piloerection, the hair on the hand will become erect. All these are the changes what adrenaline and non-adrenaline will do to prepare you how to be alert during fight and flight. Let us write down what it will do. It will increase the heartbeat. That means it is increasing cardiac output. That means it is increasing blood pressure. It will also increase your respiratory rate. So all these things you can notice when we are very much angered, these things will happen. Your heartbeat will fast, your blood pressure will become high, cardiac output will be more, respiratory rate will be more. Then BMR, basal metabolic rate, increase in BMR. Then increase in glucose concentration. How can you get glucose concentration? It will break glycogen. Glycogenolysis. It will break glycogen. From glycogen you can get glucose. It will also break lipolysis. Lipid also it will break, it will get energy. Proteolysis. It will break protein. From there also it will get energy. Piloerection. The hair on the body will become erect. Then pupillary dilation. All these are the changes we can notice. One can notice when we are very much anger, when there is any emergency situation. So all these things, why are we doing? Because of the adrenaline non-adrenaline production which is there in our body. So this is about adrenal gland. So we talked about adrenal cortex, the hormones produced by the adrenal cortex. Then we came to adrenal medulla. We talked about the adrenal medullary hormones also. Epinephrine, non-epinephrine, which comes under amine hormones, which comes under amino acid derived hormones. They are called as catecholamines since they are made from catechol, and they're called emergency hormones. They're called fight and flight hormones. So these are the things what they do. So we finished about adrenal gland. Take a screenshot, then we'll talk about pancreas. Alright. Now the first largest endocrine gland is thyroid gland. Then pancreas is the second largest endocrine gland. Then and it is an elongated, yellow-shaped, leaf-like gland, yellow-colored leaf-like gland present in the C of the duodenum. You can see here, this is a loop of the duodenum. In the loop, this is a leaf-like pancreas which is located. So when we have to talk about pancreas, so we are telling pancreas is the second largest endocrine gland. And it is an elongated, yellow colored, leaf-like gland. Where it is located? It is located in the loop of duodenum. Now the length of this gland is 12 to 15 centimeters and the weight is 85 grams. The weight is 85 grams. Now I told thyroid is the first biggest endocrine gland and it is 25 grams only. This is 85 grams, but still I'm telling it is a second largest endocrine gland. So how is it possible? Post me in the comment box. Even though it is 85 grams, how are we calling like pancreas as a second largest endocrine gland? Now pancreas is called as heterocrine gland. It is called heterocrine gland. So why are we calling it as heterocrine gland? We also call it as composite gland. Why are we calling it as composite gland? Means it is not only endocrine nature, it is not only having endocrine nature, it also has exocrine nature. The exocrine nature is because it is secreting enzymes. Endocrine nature because it is secreting hormones. Now the cells which secrete exocrine enzymes are called as acinar cells. The cells which secrete hormones are called as islets of Langerhans. The cells which secrete hormones, the endocrine portion of the pancreas is called islets of Langerhans. The exocrine portion of the pancreas, they are called as acinar cells. Acinar cells make up 98% of the pancreas, whereas islets of Langerhans will make only 1 to 2% of pancreas, and it contains 1 to 2 million cells. Now 1 to 2% itself, 1 to 2 million cells will be there. Now exocrine portion releases enzymes. The cells are called acinar cells. The enzymes, where are they present? They are present in pancreatic juice. They are present in pancreatic juice, which helps in digestion of the food. Now what will the endocrine cells do? There are 4 types of endocrine cells. Alpha cells are there, beta cells are there, gamma cells are there, and delta cells are there. But the predominant cells are alpha and beta. There are 4 types of cells which are present in the islets of Langerhans. Alpha cells, beta cells, gamma cells, and delta cells. But the predominant cells are alpha cells and beta cells. Alpha cells will secrete a hormone called glucagon. Alpha cells will secrete a polypeptide hormone called glucagon. Beta cells will secrete a polypeptide hormone called insulin, and delta cells will secrete the precursors for insulin and glucagon. Gamma cells will secrete the precursors for insulin, glucagon. Delta cells will secrete somatostatin. Delta cells will secrete somatostatin. So the predominant cells are alpha and beta only. So that's why we tell the hormones produced by the pancreas are insulin and glucagon. Insulin is secreted by the beta cells. Glucagon is secreted by the alpha cells. Insulin is called hypoglycemic hormone. Insulin's role is to decrease the glucose level. So that's why it's called hypoglycemic hormone. Means it decreases the glucose levels in the blood. So hypoglycemic hormone. On the other hand, glucagon has opposite action to that. Glucagon is called hyperglycemic hormone. Glucagon is called hyperglycemic hormone. Glucagon will increase the glucose levels in the blood. Insulin will decrease the glucose levels in the blood. So we are talking about pancreas. Where is the pancreas located? In the C-shaped duodenum, like this, a leaf-like structure will be there. It is elongated and it is yellow colored gland. It is located in the loop of the duodenum. The length is 12 to 15 centimeters. The weight is 85 grams, and we are considering it as the second largest endocrine gland. First largest endocrine gland is thyroid gland, which is 25 grams. The second largest endocrine gland should be lesser than 25 grams. But how is it 85 grams? You are going to text me in the comment box. Now pancreas, it's called heterocrine gland. It is also called composite gland. Means composite gland, complex gland means it has exocrine portion also, endocrine portion also. Exocrine portion is called as acinar region. Acinar cells will secrete enzymes. The enzymes will make pancreatic juice, which helps in digestion. The endocrine portion will release hormones. The hormones secreting cells are called islets of Langerhans, which make 1 to 2% only, which contains 1 to 2 million cells. How many types of cells are there? Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Alpha will secrete glucagon, which will increase the glucose levels. Beta will secrete insulin, which will decrease the glucose levels. Gamma will secrete the precursors for insulin and glucagon. Delta will secrete somatostatin. Take a screenshot. We will continue. Pancreatic hormones are insulin and glucagon. These are the two main hormones. Here I showed duodenum, C-shaped duodenum. In that C-shaped duodenum, here is a leaf-shaped gland called pancreas. Now this elongated pancreas, if we make a transverse section and if you see, you can see these are the acinar cells. Acinar cells make up 98% of the pancreas, and these acinar cells will secrete pancreatic juice. It's an exocrine part, means it secretes pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice contains enzymes for digesting proteins, carbohydrates, fats, nucleic acids, right? So the pancreatic juice which is released by these acinar cells will be collected into the pancreatic ducts, and this pancreatic duct opens at this duodenum. Now next one, if you see this one, I label this as islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans is an endocrine portion which secretes hormones. So acinar cells, exocrine part which secretes pancreatic juice, and this islets of Langerhans is the endocrine part. This endocrine part secretes hormones. It contains alpha cells, beta cells and delta cells. Here these peripheral cells of islets of Langerhans are called alpha cells. Alpha cells, what hormone do they secrete? It secretes glucagon. And inner to the alpha cells, these are beta cells. This black colored cells are represented by beta cells. Beta cells secrete another hormone called insulin. And in between these two are the delta cells which secrete another hormone called somatostatin. The peripheral cells are alpha cells. Inner to the peripheral cells are beta cells, and in between the alpha cells and beta cells are the delta cells. Alpha cells will secrete glucagon, beta cells will secrete insulin, delta cells will secrete somatostatin. So this is the anatomy of the pancreas, and this is a visualization. This is what we see in the alimentary canal. Now if we have to talk about the hormone, the main hormone is insulin. So insulin is the first hormone to be, means it's an earliest hormone, we can tell. The first hormone to be discovered is secretin. So we can tell insulin has been discovered long back itself. And which type of hormone is it? Is it steroid hormone or peptide hormone or amino acid derived hormone? It's a peptide hormone made up of 51 amino acids, and it has role in glucose homeostasis. It tries to maintain the glucose levels. Means insulin is hypoglycemic hormone. It will decrease the blood glucose levels. It will maintain the blood glucose levels. How will insulin maintain the glucose levels? Means it will not allow glucose synthesis from other sources like fats and proteins. Means it stops gluconeogenesis. And in the blood, whatever glucose is there, it will drive that glucose to the hepatocytes, liver cells. In the liver cells, it will convert that glucose into glycogen. Synthesis of glycogen is called glycogenesis. It will do glycogenesis, and it acts on the hepatocytes also, adipose tissues also. In adipose tissues, it will convert that extra glucose into fat and it stores there. So insulin acts on the liver cells, it acts on the adipocytes, fat cells, and it will ask the hepatocytes and the fat cells to take off the glucose from the blood so that the blood glucose levels will reduce down. In the liver, the glucose gets converted to glycogen. The process is called glycogenesis. Glycogenesis is stimulated by insulin. In the fat cells, in the adipocytes, glucose gets converted to fat, which is called lipogenesis. Then it stops gluconeogenesis. It will not allow fatty acids and amino acids to make glucose. Means it stops synthesizing glucose. It stimulates utilization of glucose by the cells. It will ask the cells to take off the glucose from the blood, and the cell can use that glucose. If the cell breaks the glucose, it gets energy. That's called cellular respiration. Energy yield will be there. So it will distribute the glucose from the blood to the individual cells so that the cell will use that glucose. It uses it as a respiratory substrate and it gets 38 molecules of ATP. So all these are the functions of insulin, which is a peptide hormone made up of 51 amino acids secreted by the beta cells, and it is hypoglycemic. It will reduce the blood glucose levels by doing all these things. Now what happens happens if insulin is not secreted in required amounts. Hyposecretion of insulin leads to a serious disorder called diabetes mellitus. Hyposecretion of insulin causes a disorder called diabetes mellitus. Mellitus means sugar, excess sugar is called diabetes mellitus. So usually the amount of glucose should be 80 to 100 or 80 to 120 mg per 100 ml. But consistently if the blood glucose levels are more than 100, more than 120, more than 150, then the disorder is called as diabetes mellitus. Means in the blood the glucose levels are high. Why the glucose levels are high? Because the pancreas has failed to secrete insulin. Pancreas is not producing sufficient insulin, so that's why the glucose levels are rising up, they are increasing up. Then how can you correct this disorder? By administering insulin. They take insulin shots, they take insulin injections, so that external insulin what they have taken, that will reduce the glucose levels. Now a person who is having this diabetes mellitus, what are the symptoms they exhibit? What are the predisposing factors? The first thing is glucose levels will be high. How much? More than 150 milligrams per 100 ml. And people who are diabetic pass many times urine. That is called as diuresis. They pass urine many times, it's called diuresis. And in the urine glucose will come. If in the urine if glucose is coming, that's called glycosuria. Okay, so glycosuria, excretion of glucose in the urine. You can check it by adding Benedict's reagent. If you add Benedict's reagent, brick red color if it gives, that means urine contains glucose. Not only glycosuria, ketone bodies also comes in urine. That is also a symptom of diabetes. So ketone bodies coming in urine is called ketonuria. Glycosuria, glucose in the urine. Ketonuria, ketone bodies in the urine. And see, the people who are having diabetes will have 3 P's: polyuria, polyphagia, polydipsia. Polyuria, frequent urination. Polyphagia, frequent eating, means their satiety will not come. They want to eat more. Polyphagia. Polydipsia, frequently thirst. They want to drink more, they want to eat more, they will urinate more. So these 3 are the major symptoms of diabetes mellitus. And delayed wound healing. Wound healing will not happen that easily. Blurred vision, their vision will not be clear. Then the eyes are getting affected, we call it as a diabetic retinopathy. Kidneys are getting affected, we call diabetic nephropathy. And it might lead to diabetic coma also if it is not treated, if the glucose levels are not brought down, and it might lead to death also. So how to treat this? We can treat this by administering insulin hormone. So children, take a screenshot, then we will talk about the second hormone secreted by the alpha cells, which is called as glucagon. Yeah, we finished insulin, the first hormone secreted by the pancreas. Now the next hormone secreted by the alpha cells of the pancreas is called as glucagon. Insulin and glucagon, they are opposite to each other. Whatever actions insulin is doing, the antagonistic actions glucagon will do. So whatever functions we wrote for glucose, the opposite functions if we write, it becomes the functions of glucagon. So glucagon is secreted by the alpha cells of islets of Langerhans. It is secreted by the alpha cells of islets of Langerhans. Glucagon is also a peptide hormone. It is also a peptide hormone, and glucagon is hyperglycemic hormone. What do you mean by hypoglycemic hormone? It increases the blood glucose levels. It will increase the blood glucose levels. So that's why we call it as hyperglycemic hormone. How glucagon will increase the blood glucose levels means, so it will promote glucose synthesis. It will promote glucose synthesis from proteins and fats. It breaks the proteins, it breaks the fats, from that it makes glucose. The process of making glucose from non-carbohydrate sources is called gluconeogenesis. So it promotes gluconeogenesis. So in this manner, it makes the synthesis of glucose more. Second one, it breaks glycogen. It breaks glycogen. When it breaks glycogen, so we get glucose. Glycogen is broken down to glucose. The process of breakdown of glycogen is called glycogenolysis. So glucagon will do glycogen lysis. Glycogenolysis. And glucagon will not allow the cellular uptake of glucose. So glucagon will maintain the glucose in the blood. So it decreases cellular uptake of glucose. It decreases the cellular uptake of glucose so that the glucose will retain in the blood itself. In this manner, glucagon acts as a hyperglycemic hormone. Means it tries to increase the blood glucose levels. Now, this is about glucagon, which is secreted by the alpha cells. Insulin beta cells we have secreted. Now, let us discuss about the delta cells. The delta cells of pancreas will secrete a hormone called somatostatin. See, statin means stopping. Statin means stopping. This somatostatin hormone secreted by these delta cells will stop the secretion of insulin and glucagon. Somatostatin, what it will do? It stops the secretion. It stops the secretion of insulin and glucagon. Means it will not allow the alpha cells to secrete glucagon. It will not allow the beta cells to secrete insulin. So with this, we finished pancreas and pancreatic hormones. Disorders, diabetes mellitus also we have discussed. Now, the next organ is gonads. Take a screenshot. We'll talk about gonads then. Right. Gonads means reproductive structures. The male gonad is testis. The female gonad is ovary. And what are the hormones produced by testis? Testis produce the male sex hormones called androgens. Ovaries produce the female sex hormone called estrogens, right? So, we'll talk about the gonadal hormones now. Yes. Then comes gonads. The male gonad. What is a male sex organ? The male gonad is called testis. And what is the female sex organ? What is a female gonad? The female gonad is ovaries. And where is testis located? Outside the abdomen, extra abdominal. And where is the female sex organ ovaries located? Inside the abdomen. It is located inside the abdomen. Now, the gonads are both exocrine and endocrine in nature. They secrete enzymes also, they secrete hormones also. So, we can tell they are both exocrine and endocrine in nature. So, when do they secrete hormones? They secrete hormones at the time of puberty. When the person attains puberty, from then the gonads start secreting hormones. Gonads secrete hormones when the child attains puberty. When the child attains puberty, gonads start secreting hormones, and these hormones secreted by the gonads will control the reproductive activities. So, gonadal hormones, what do? Gonadal hormones, they control the reproductive activities. They are controlling the reproductive activities. Let us talk about the male gonad, which is testis. Let's talk about the male gonad, which is testis. Now, testis is considered as the primary sex organ. So, why are you considering as a primary sex organ? Primary sex organ means it has to do two things. The first thing, it has to secrete sex hormone. Yes, testis will secrete sex hormone, and it has to secrete the male gametes. The male gametes secreted by the testis are called as sperms. Since the testis is secreting sex hormone, which is called as androgen, the male sex hormone is called androgen, and since it is secreting the male gamete called sperm, so we call testis as a primary sex organ. Now, testis, the primary sex organ, so where it is located? It is extra-abdominally located. If we see, so there will be one testis present inside the sac and another testis will be here. Now, in this testis, if you see, each testis contains testicular lobes. This is one lobe, this is another lobe, and this is the another lobe. So each testis contains testicular lobes. The lobes contains tubules. The tubules are called seminiferous tubules. So this is one seminiferous tubule, this is another seminiferous tubule. Now, in between the seminiferous tubules lie the cells. Scattered cells are there. Those cells are called interstitial cells. So we draw testis. This is testis. Inside the testis we draw the testicular lobules. Inside the lobules we draw seminiferous tubules. Now, in between the seminiferous tubules are these are the cells. The cells are called interstitial cells. What are the cells called? They are called interstitial cells. They are also called Leydig cells. They are also called Leydig cells. Now, these Leydig cells are acted upon by the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland will secrete a hormone. The hormone secreted by the pituitary gland which comes and acts on Leydig cells is called as luteinizing hormone. So there is a pituitary hormone called luteinizing hormone which comes and acts on Leydig cells. Then the Leydig cells gets activated and they start secreting the male sex hormone androgen. The Leydig cells, under the influence of a pituitary hormone, secretes androgens. Now, the name of the androgen, the major androgen is testosterone. Testosterone is secreted here in the outside spaces. This is the male sex hormone. This male sex hormone which is synthesized here goes inside the seminiferous tubule. It will go inside the seminiferous tubule and it promotes the process of spermatogenesis. It helps in synthesizing the sperms. Understood, children? We are talking about the male gonad called testis and we are considering testis as a primary sex organ. If it has to be a primary sex organ, it has to do two things. One, it has to produce the male sex hormone androgen. The second thing, it has to produce the male gamete called sperms. Now, we are talking about the testis. They are outside the abdomen, extra-abdominal. They hang and they are present inside the scrotal sacs. Each testis contains lobes. The lobes are called testicular lobes. The lobes contains tubules called seminiferous tubules. In between the seminiferous tubules, spaces are there. In these spaces, cells are there. Those cells are called as interstitial cells. They are also called as Leydig cells. On these Leydig cells, pituitary gland, anterior pituitary gland, luteinizing hormone will come and act on the Leydig cells. Then the Leydig cells gets activated and they produce the male sex hormone androgen called testosterone. This testosterone which is produced in this space goes inside and stimulates the process of spermatogenesis. Take a screenshot. We'll talk about the functions of testosterone. Now, what are the functions of testosterone if we have to list down? We told testosterone production in boys starts at the age of puberty. Now, at the age of puberty, so many changes we can see in boys, we can see in girls also. So those changes are called as secondary sexual characters. That means functions of testosterone. It's a steroid hormone. So the first function is it controls growth and development of male sex organs. It controls growth and development of male accessory organs. The male accessory organs grow and develop in the presence of testosterone. What are the male accessory organs? Epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, urethra. You will study it in second year, human reproduction, chapter number 3. There we will study it in detail. Here we will just list down the secondary accessory organs. The male accessory organs are, if we have to list down the male accessory organs, the first one is epididymis. The second one is vasa deferentia. Then seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and urethra, which brings the sperms down. So all this helps in the development of the male reproductive system. So testosterone will help in the growth and development of all these things. Not only all these things, it helps in the development of secondary sexual characters. So what are the secondary sexual characters we see in boys at the age of puberty? So it helps, testosterone helps in development of secondary sexual characters. What are the secondary sexual characters we can notice in boys? Means development of underarm hair, axial hair will be developed, development of pubic hair at the pubic symphysis, development of facial hair, mustache and beard will come. So development of characters, axial hair, pubic hair, facial hair. Then next one, muscle development will happen in boys. Then aggressiveness is because of the male hormone only. So muscle development, aggressiveness, low pitch voice is also secondary sexual character. The voice will be low. So all these are some characters which are seen at the age of puberty in boys. So now this is also under the influence of testosterone only, and we told it will go inside and it will promote the process spermatogenesis. It makes sperms. What is the process called? Spermatogenesis. So we can tell testosterone stimulates spermatogenesis. Genesis of sperm, synthesizing spermatozoa is called as spermatogenesis. Testosterone stimulates spermatogenesis is the other function. Now, testosterone or androgens act on the central nervous system and it influences that male sexual behavior, which is called as libido. So, androgen acts on central nervous system. It acts on central nervous system and it influences the male sexual behavior. It is responsible to influence the male sexual behavior called libido. What is that called? Sorry. Male sexual behavior is called libido. Not only that, it is helping in sperm synthesis, right? Sperm is a protein. That means androgens have anabolic development. Androgens have anabolic effect. Androgens have anabolic effect. So anabolic effect means what does they do? It will help in protein synthesis and carbohydrate synthesis. It helps in protein synthesis and it helps in carbohydrate synthesis. Now we know that it is helping in synthesizing the sperm. Sperm is made up of proteins only, and it helps in synthesizing of hormones. Hormones are made up of fats. So it will promote carbohydrate synthesis, it will promote fat synthesis, and it promotes carbohydrate synthesis also. All these are the functions of testosterone. What did we write? Testosterone controls the growth and development of the male secondary axillary organs. It is responsible for controlling the male secondary sexual characters, and it stimulates spermatogenesis. It controls the male sexual behavior. What's the male sexual behavior called? Libido. Then it is responsible for anabolic effect, protein synthesis, fat synthesis, carbohydrate synthesis. Now the disorder, if testosterone is not produced, what happens? It leads to sterility. Sperm production will not happen, hormone production will not happen. So hyposecretion of testosterone leads to sterility. So we can write down hyposecretion of androgen leads to sterility. The males are sterile. That means no sperm production. Sperms are not produced. Right, children, we finished about the male gonad, that is testis. Take a screenshot, then we'll talk about the female gonad called ovaries. Right. Now we discussed that testes are extra-abdominal and they are protected in a sacs called scrotal sacs. if we have to talk about ovaries, are they extra-abdominal or are they inside the abdomen? Female reproductive parts are inside the abdomen. So the female gonad, what is a female gonad? It is ovaries. Where are the ovaries located? They are located inside the abdomen. They are located inside the abdomen. They are almond-shaped structures. They are almond-shaped pink structures. Now, we are considering ovaries are also as primary sex organs. If it has to be called as a primary sex organ, it has to do two things. It has to secrete sex hormones, first thing, and it has to secrete the female gamete. Yes, both the things ovaries will do. So the ovaries secrete the female sex hormone called estrogen and progesterone. Since it is secreting the female sex hormone called estrogen and progesterone, and it will release the female gamete called egg or ovum. Both the things it is doing, so that's why we call ovaries as primary sex organs. Now, where are they located? Inside the abdomen, at the pelvic region. What is the shape? Almond shape. What is the color? Pink colored structures. Now, what are ovaries made of? If we see an ovary is covered by thin fibrous capsule. Now, it has, this is a medullary part where blood vessels will be there. The outer portion is called as ovarian cortex. The outer portion is called ovarian cortex, and this is medulla. Together, cortex and medulla together is called ovarian stroma. Inside the ovarian stroma, there are follicles, right? Primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, matured Graafian follicle. The Graafian follicle will rupture to release the egg, right? So inside this is an almond shaped ovary. Inside the ovary, if we are seeing this, the inner part is the ovarian medulla, the outer part is the ovarian cortex. Together we can call it a stroma. In the ovarian stroma, ovarian follicles are there. In different developmental stages they are there. Primary follicle is there, covered by only granulosa cells. Secondary follicle is there, covered by granulosa cells and theca cells. Tertiary follicle, where fluid filled anthem also will be there. All these things will be studying in human reproduction, second year, third chapter. Tertiary follicle develops and matures into Graafian follicle. Now it has matured. Now it will rupture and it will release ova, ovulation. On the 14th day in the menstrual cycle, it will release the egg. So that means the egg is released by ovaries only. So that is why it is called as a primary sex organ, right? So these ovarian follicles, the development of ovarian follicles occurs in the presence of a pituitary hormone called follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone is responsible for the development of these follicles. Now when the follicle is fully developed, then what happens? Luteinizing hormone will come, and the luteinizing hormone will rupture the follicle. It will rupture the follicle. When the follicle ruptures, that step is called ovulation. Ova has been released. That step is called ovulation. Egg or ova is released here. So since it is releasing the female gamete, it is called as primary sex organ. Now what happens to this ruptured follicle? This is the ruptured follicle. The ruptured follicle, in the influence of luteinizing hormone, in the presence of the luteinizing hormone, the ruptured follicle starts depositing a fatty substance, lutein. It will deposit a fatty substance called lutein and transforms itself into corpus luteum. So the ruptured Graafian follicle under the influence of luteinizing hormone will deposit lutein, fat, and it develops into a temporary endocrine tissue called corpus luteum. This corpus luteum starts secreting the second hormone, which is called progesterone. Now primary, secondary, tertiary Graafian follicle will produce estrogen. these ovarian follicles are producing estrogen, and when the ovarian follicle ruptured and the egg got released, the ruptured follicle, after depositing fat luteinization, it turns into corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum will secrete progesterone. This progesterone is called as pregnancy maintaining hormones, right? So take a screenshot, then we will discuss about the functions of estrogen and progesterone. Right, so what will testosterone do? Testosterone helps in secondary sexual character development. It helps in male accessory organ development. It's responsible for the male sexual behavior. Then the female sex hormone also will do the same things, right? So if you have to list down the functions of estrogen, which is a steroid hormone, so it helps in the growth and development of secondary secondary sex organs. So in males also it helps in development of secondary sex organs. Here also it helps in development of secondary sex organs. Not only that, it also helps in the development of secondary sexual characters. Helps in the growth and development of secondary sexual characters. If we have to list down what are the secondary sexual characters, means girls will have high pitch voice. They have high pitch voice. They don't have muscle development. Fat deposition will be there, abdominal fat deposition. Abdominal fat deposition will be there. Then breast development, inside the breast mammary gland development to feed the baby, mammary gland development. Menstruation will happen, where the egg will be released. In menstruation, ovulation will happen, right? Hormonal changes will be there, hormonal mood swings. So these are some of the secondary sexual characters. High pitch voice, abdominal fat deposition, breast development will be there, menstruation will be there, and hormonal mood swings. So these are under the control of estrogen only. Now it's responsible for secondary sex organs, responsible for secondary sex characters. It is responsible for the female sexual behavior also. Estrogen responsible for the development of female sexual behavior also. Now, hyposecretion of estrogen. Hyposecretion of estrogen or no secretion of estrogen leads to no ovulation. When there is no ovulation, then the woman is also called sterile. Then they are called sterile. Children, this is about the first female sex hormone called estrogen. Now, let's talk about the functions of progesterone also as well. Now, progesterone, why are you calling it as a pregnancy maintaining hormone? Estrogen is called female sex hormone. Likewise, progesterone is called pregnancy maintaining hormone. Why is it called pregnancy maintaining hormone? Means, so it will maintain the uterus for implantation. If this is a uterus, the uterus inner lining is called endometrium. The uterus inner lining is called endometrium. So it helps in development of endometrium of the uterus. It is preparing the uterus for implantation. Means it is helping in implantation. Means the zygote will get implanted in the endometrium. So it is developing the endometrium to develop. It is helping in implantation, and it will sustain pregnancy. It sustains pregnancy, and it helps breast development. It helps mammary gland development. Inside the mammary glands, progesterone will develop alveoli. Alveoli are the cells which help in milk production. It helps in milk production also. Progesterone helps in milk secretion also. That's what NCERT says, that progesterone, which is developed by that ruptured Graafian follicle, corpus luteum, it's called as pregnancy maintaining hormone. Why do we call progesterone as pregnancy maintaining hormone? Means how is it supporting pregnancy? Means the uterine endometrium, it proliferates the endometrium so that nicely the zygote can come and sit and implantation can happen. So it is making the zygote to get implanted. Not only that, it is permitting the embryo development also. Not only that, it is helping in placental development also. Then it is sustaining the pregnancy. It is allowing the pregnancy to get sustained here, maintained here. It will help in breast development. Inside the breast, mammary glands will develop. Inside the mammary glands, alveoli, the milk producing cells will develop. It helps in milk production and it helps in milk secretion also. So children, with this we finished the gonadal hormones. Then next comes the diffused glands and the tissues, which are not perfectly endocrine, but they secrete certain hormones, like heart secretes ANF and kidney secrete erythropoietin, liver secretes insulin like growth factors, gastrointestinal tract will secreting cholecystokinin, that hormones also we will see. Take a screenshot of this fast. We finished the hormones of major endocrine glands. Now there are hormones secreted by some tissues which are not endocrine glands. What are those tissues? Which hormones do they secrete? So they have given an NCERT, I have took them on the board already. So endocrine glands means ductless glands, and they release the secretions into the blood, and blood will carry it to the target locations, target organs. But if you see, heart comes under circulatory system, kidneys, excretory system, gastrointestinal tract, digestive system. They are in different systems, but they work under endocrine system also, right? So some tissues which are not endocrine glands also secrete hormones. For example, if we take heart, when the blood pressure increases, now what is the hormone secreted by the heart so that it can control down the blood pressure? It regulates the blood pressure. Means when the blood pressure goes high, then the atrial wall of the heart will secrete a hormone called ANF, a peptide hormone called ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. When the blood pressure in the heart rises, then the atrial wall of the heart will secrete a peptide hormone called ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. This atrial natriuretic factor, what it will do? The blood vessels which are there, so it will dilate the blood vessels. When the blood vessel which is this much narrow, when it gets dilated this much, so blood can freely flow through that freely opened blood vessels. So then what happens? Automatically pressure drops down. So in that manner it controls the blood pressure. I have written here that heart, when the blood pressure rises, then the heart, the atrial wall of the heart will secrete a peptide hormone called ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. This ANF comes and dilates the blood vessels. When the blood vessels dilate, so then the pressure automatically drops down. Freely the blood can pass down. So means automatically the pressure drops down. Now let us talk about the hormone which is secreted by the kidneys. When we climb to higher altitudes, then we face breathing difficulty, which is called altitude sickness. At higher altitudes, the oxygen which is there is not sufficient for us. The RBC which is transporting the oxygen to our body parts is not sufficient for us. We get dizziness, we get fatigue and all those things. All those symptoms comes under altitude sickness. Now at that situation, so if the RBC are more, then they can catch up more oxygen, and that oxygen will be delivered to all your body parts, and we can come out of that situation called altitude sickness. That weakness we can come out. Now under such situations, the kidney will produce a hormone called erythropoietin. This erythropoietin can make ready-made RBC to prevent us from altitude sickness. So which cells of the kidney will secrete the hormone called erythropoietin? Means efferent arteriole is an arteriole which brings the impure blood to the nephron, right, to the glomerulus. Now that efferent arteriole with JG cells, juxtaglomerular cells, the juxtaglomerular cells with the efferent arteriole will secrete a hormone called erythropoietin, which is also a peptide hormone which helps in instant synthesis, ready-made synthesis of RBC, so that we can take more oxygen. More RBC means more carriers are there, more oxygen goes into our body. So we can come out of that situation called altitude sickness. Understood, children? Now the third one is gastrointestinal tract. Our alimentary canal is called gastrointestinal tract. It produces enzymes, means it's exocrine by nature, but it can also secrete hormones. Different portions of the gastrointestinal tract secrete different hormones. The major four hormones are, one is gastrin, second one is secretin, third one is CCK, and the fourth hormone is GIP. All these four are again peptide hormones only. Four major peptides. The first one is called gastrin, secreted by the G cells of the stomach. Which part of the stomach? Pyloric part of the stomach. Cardiac portion, body portion, fundus portion are there, like that. From the pyloric portion, the G cells of the stomach will secrete a hormone called gastrin. This gastrin acts on the gastric glands and it helps in secretion of more gastric juice. More HCl will be formed, more pepsinogen hormone will be formed, which helps in digestion. Then coming to the second hormone, secretin. It is produced by the S cells of the duodenum. Secretin, another hormone produced by the S cells of duodenum. It acts on the pancreas. Secretin acts on the pancreas and makes the pancreas to secrete more water and more bicarbonates, because the acid mixed food called chyme comes into the duodenum. Now that acid should be neutralized, then only alkaline pH will further digest the food. So means bicarbonate ions should neutralize the acidic chyme. So here the secretin produced by the S cells of the duodenum acts on the pancreas, makes the pancreas to secrete more water and more bicarbonate so that the acidic content can be neutralized. Okay. The third hormone is CCK, cholecystokinin, secreted by the CCK cells of the duodenum. Cholecystokinin secreted by the cholecystokinin cells of the duodenum. It acts on the gallbladder, it acts on the pancreas. It asks the gallbladder to secrete more bile juice, it asks the pancreas to secrete more pancreatic juice, so which will further help in improving the digestion process. CCK acts on the gallbladder and the pancreatic juice, help in secretion of more pancreatic juice and more bile juice. The last hormone is GIP, gastric inhibitory peptide. The last one is gastric inhibitory peptide. What it will do? It will inhibit gastric secretion and it will inhibit gastric mobility. When vomitings and motions are there, then the alimentary canal make different sounds. Then that mobility will be more. Frequent bowel movement will be there and frequent passing of stools will happen. Under such situations, what this hormone will do? It will reduce the mobility and it will inhibit the gastric secretion. So acidity will not be there. So this is also peptide hormone. What is it called? GIP, gastric inhibitory peptide. Now along with these things, we can also tell liver also secretes a hormone called insulin-like growth factor, which helps in growth, development and differentiation and injury, regeneration of the lost parts. So liver, which is a non-endocrine tissue, it secretes growth factors, insulin-like growth factors, which helps in growth, repair and regeneration of the tissues. Now this concept also we finish, take a screenshot, then we will talk about the mechanism of hormone action, which is the last topic of the chapter. Right. So we finished the major hormones. Then we have seen the other hormones which are released by non-endocrine glands, which are called tissues. Now let us talk about the mechanism of hormone action. Now how will hormone show its response? How will it control the physiological responses of our body? In which manner it acts? So if you see, hormones are released by the endocrine glands. And endocrine glands are ductless glands. That means the secretions which are released by the hormones are directly poured into the blood. And blood acts as a carrier to transport the hormone to the target organ. Now the blood will deliver the hormone to its target organ. Now after going to the target organ, now what the hormone will do? That comes under mechanism of hormone action. So let us write down. Mechanism of hormone action. We know that the endocrine glands, they secrete hormones into blood, and the blood will deliver hormone to the target organ. it will deliver to the target organ. After reaching the target organ, what the hormone will do, that we should know now. Hormones will act in two manners here. Some hormones will bind to the receptors which are located on the membrane itself. Some hormones can go inside and they will bind to the receptors which are located inside the cell. So on that basis, we can categorize the hormones into two types: group 1 hormones and group 2 hormones. We can categorize the hormones into group 1 hormones and group 2 hormones. Now, group 2 hormones are protein and peptide hormones. Group 2 hormones are, we can tell they are water soluble hormones. They are water soluble hormones. So, group 1 hormones are fat soluble hormones. Examples for water soluble hormones are protein and peptide hormones. Protein and peptide hormones are water soluble hormones. Examples for fat soluble hormones, you can take steroid hormones and thyroid hormone. These are examples of steroid hormones, fat soluble hormones. Now, group 1 hormones, since they are water soluble, and since if we see the cell membrane is made up of phospholipids only, right? The cell membrane is made up of phospholipids. Now, the phospholipid membrane is permeable for lipid soluble substances. The cell membrane is permeable for lipid soluble substances, but this is water soluble substance, so it cannot go into the cell. It cannot go into the cell. So, for such hormones which cannot go into the cell, the receptors are located on the membrane itself. For such hormones, where are the receptors located? The receptors are located on the membrane itself. That means group 1 hormone receptors, where are they located? The receptors, what are the receptors first of all? Receptors are specific proteins. Receptors are specific protein molecules. For every hormone, one receptor will be there. For insulin, one receptor will be there. For glucagon, one receptor will be there. For pituitary hormones, one receptor will be there. So, hormones, receptors are specific for each hormone. Now, receptors are specific protein molecules, and the receptors which are present on the membrane are called membrane-bound receptors. So, if the receptors are on membrane, means if they are on the cell membrane, means such type of receptors are called membrane bound receptors. They are called membrane bound receptors. Now, the hormone comes and binds. The hormone cannot go inside because it is water soluble and the membrane is fat soluble. So, the hormone cannot go inside and the hormone comes and binds to the receptor which is located on the membrane itself. So, this is a hormone. It has bound to the receptor which is located on the membrane. Then, it makes hormone receptor complex. In group 2 hormones, water soluble hormones, HR complex, hormone receptor complex is formed on the membrane itself, on the outside itself. Now it cannot go inside. Now then what happens? This hormone receptor complex, it will further activate. This hormone is called as chemical messenger. Is called as chemical messenger, or we can also call it as primary messenger. This primary messenger hormone, now it induces some changes and it helps in the synthesis of secondary messenger. The primary hormone which is outside itself, it will synthesize secondary messenger by some response. One they have given in NCRT. So it will synthesize secondary messenger. Now what are secondary messengers? Secondary messengers can be cyclic AMP is one example of secondary messenger. Inositol triphosphate is another example of secondary messenger. Calcium ion is another example of secondary messenger. So take a protein hormone or peptide hormone. Let us take a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone produced by the anterior pituitary, which is a peptide hormone. It's a peptide hormone, means it is water soluble. So protein and peptide hormones, they have receptors located on the membrane itself. Now the follicle stimulating hormone comes and binds to, if your follicle stimulating hormone comes and acts on the ovaries, no, it acts on the gonad. So that means take it as an ovarian membrane. In NCRT they told this is an ovarian membrane. Follicle stimulating hormone comes and binds to the receptor which is located on the ovarian membrane, and then it induces changes hormones inside so that secondary messenger will be synthesized. Secondary messenger like cyclic AMP or calcium will be synthesized in this case. To synthesize cyclic AMP, you need an enzyme called adenylate cyclase. To synthesize the secondary messenger cyclic AMP, we require an enzyme called cyclic adenylate cyclase it is. It is called adenylate cyclase enzyme. This adenylate cyclase enzyme helps in synthesis of cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP is called a secondary messenger. This cyclic AMP, thus synthesized, it will show biochemical response. It will show biochemical responses, and these biochemical responses will initiate physiological responses. It will initiate physiological responses. What are the physiological responses which are initiated? Means we know that follicle stimulating hormone helps in ovarian growth. It helps in ovarian follicular growth. Ovarian follicles, primary will become secondary, secondary will become tertiary, tertiary will become Graafian follicle. So it helps in ovary growth, it helps in ovarian follicular growth. In this manner the hormone acts. Then those hormones are called group 2 hormones. They are water soluble hormones. They are protein and peptide hormones. Example, we have taken a peptide hormone called follicle stimulating hormone, which comes and acts on the gonad, ovary. The hormone receptor complex will be there, will be formed on the membrane itself because its receptor is located on the membrane itself. They are membrane bound receptors. Now this hormone receptor complex will induce change inside, and then it will activate an enzyme called adenylate cyclase. Adenylate cyclase helps in conversion of ATP to cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP acts as a secondary messenger. It will initiate biochemical changes which will further initiate physiological responses. Which physiological responses means development of the ovaries and development of the ovarian follicles. With this we finish the mechanism of action of group 1 hormones. Take a screenshot. I'll explain once again in a better manner. Right. Let's once again talk about the group 2 hormones before going to group 1 hormones. The picture what I showed you just now is the picture which is there in NCERT. If we have to understand it in a better manner, right. So, membrane and the receptor is present on the membrane itself. Okay, hormone receptor complex is formed outside itself. This is hormone and this is protein receptor. So HR complex is formed outside itself. Now this HR complex which is formed outside, what it will do? It will activate the proteins which are present inside. There, suppose think there is a protein here. This activates a protein here which is called as G protein. Now since it cannot come in, it is activating the protein which is inside, which is called G protein. Now this G protein has energy in the form of GTP. Now this G protein which is having energy in the form of GTP will come and activate one more enzyme, one more protein which is called as adenylate cyclase. Now the hormone receptor complex which is formed outside, it came, it is inducing the response inside. It is activating a protein called G protein which is here. G protein is having GTP. Using this GTP, it is coming and activating one more enzyme called adenylate cyclase. This adenylate cyclase will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP acts as a secondary messenger. It acts as a secondary messenger. The primary messenger, the chemical messenger, is a hormone. Now the impulse has been passed to the secondary messenger, the cyclic AMP molecule. It induces biochemical responses. It will induce biochemical responses. Means it will activate some enzymes. Biochemical responses means it will activate some enzymes. These enzymes will lead to physiological responses. It will lead to further physiological responses. In this manner, hormone staying outside itself, it is managing its function. Now, this is about cyclic AMP. There are calcium and inositol triphosphate also, which acts as a secondary messengers. What about that we will see. Now, if we draw the same mechanism, here is one cyclic AMP, one secondary messenger. The other secondary messengers are inositol triphosphate, and the third one is calcium ion. We will talk about this also. Now again, if the hormone comes and binds to the receptor which is located on the membrane itself, if the hormone comes and binds to the receptor which is located on the membrane itself, now this hormone receptor complex which is formed inside, it will open the ion channels. What is this ion channel? It will open ion channels. When the ion channels are opened, then influx of calcium will happen. So when the HR complex is formed here, so then what happens? Calcium channels will open, calcium starts diffusing in, means influx of calcium will happen. This influx of calcium which is inside, calcium is also secondary messenger. It comes and activates a protein called calmodulin. This comes and activates a protein called calmodulin. This calmodulin, actually it is inactive. In the presence of calcium, with calcium, it becomes active. The active calmodulin will come and activate enzymes. It is responsible for biochemical responses. Which is further responsible for physiological responses. It's the same. Actually, here cyclic AMP is synthesized. Here calcium is coming inside. Calcium comes and activates calmodulin. Calmodulin calcium complex will come and activate the further enzymes. These enzymes will become active. They initiate the biochemical and physiological responses. In the same manner, inositol triphosphate also is a secondary messenger. This inositol triphosphate will make more calciums to come inside. Both are interlinked. So this is about the mechanism of action of group 2 hormones. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about mechanism of action of group 1 hormones, fat soluble hormones, steroid hormones. Yes. Now when we talk about the mechanism of action of group 1 hormones, which are fat soluble hormones, which are steroid hormones, mechanism of action of group 1 hormones, we are telling. Group 1 hormones means we are telling they are fat soluble hormones. Fat soluble hormones means they are steroid hormones. Examples for steroid hormones are male and female sex hormones, cortical hormones, with thyroid hormones also, T3, T4. So now these are steroid hormones. Now they are fat soluble hormones. That means if you see, this is the membrane. This is the membrane which is made up of phospholipid, right? Now what is this membrane? This membrane is phospholipid membrane. So we can call it as a uterine membrane. This is uterine wall. Now if you have to take the hormone, in NCERT they showed this is a hormone. This is a hormone. What hormone they showed? Estrogen, female sex hormone. This hormone is estrogen. What is estrogen? It is female sex hormone. Now, estrogen, which is a fat hormone, steroid hormone, can easily cross the cell membrane, which is made up of phospholipids. It crosses the cell membrane, it goes inside, it goes inside, it goes inside. And even it can cross the nuclear membrane also, and it will go inside. So, cell membrane it anyway crossed. This is a nuclear membrane. It even crosses the nuclear membrane also. It will cross the nuclear membrane also, and it will go inside. After going inside, it will directly bind to the genome. So what is there inside the nuclear membrane? All of us know that the nuclear membrane contains genetic material, DNA. So it crosses this membrane because it is fat soluble. It crosses the nuclear membrane also. It's going and acting on the genome directly. on the chromosome directly. That means where are the receptors located for the group 1 hormones or fat soluble hormones? They are located inside the cell. We are telling those receptors are called intracellular receptors. The receptors are called intracellular receptors. Where are they present? Inside the cell only. Where inside the cell? On the genome itself they are located. So this is a DNA. On the DNA itself we can tell the receptor is located. See, this is a receptor molecule. The estrogen will go and bind to the receptor. The estrogen will go and bind to the receptor which is present on the genome. Now, if it goes and binds to the receptor which is present on the genome, then what happens? So, from DNA, this is DNA, it will make RNA. The process of making RNA from DNA is called transcription. Now, RNA will do translation. It will do translation, protein synthesis. Now, a protein will be made. Now, this protein is responsible for biochemical response. This protein is responsible for biochemical response. Cumulatively, many biochemical responses are responsible for physiological responses. They are responsible for internal responses are called physiological responses. So, let us see once again, we are talking about fat soluble hormones, steroid hormones. Steroid hormones, they can easily mix up with the phospholipid membrane. So, that is why the receptors are not present on the membrane. The receptors are present inside. The receptors are called intracellular receptors. They cross the cell membrane, they cross the nuclear membrane also. And where are the receptors present? On the genome, directly on the DNA, on the chromosome. That means hormone receptor complex is formed on the genome. So, what is this? I am showing this is hormone receptor complex. Where is a hormone receptor complex formed? On the DNA, on the genome. It activates the gene directly. It controls the gene expression directly. The hormone can control the gene expression or the chromosomal expression directly. It can activate the DNA, it can make RNA, it can make proteins. These proteins can do the biochemical responses, they can do the physiological responses. Now, what if estrogen is there? Estrogen and progesterone, they help in the development of the uterus, they help in the growth of the uterus. So, which physiological responses are we talking about here? It helps in the growth and development. It helps in the growth and development of uterus. That's it, children. We finished the chapter. We finished the mechanism of action of hormones also. So, I will give the pictorial view of these diseases. Means acromegaly, how does the person appears, gigantism, dwarfism, Cushing Syndrome, Addison's disease. All these, I'll just post the pictures in the next video. So, watch that video also. Hope you understood the content. Any comments, kindly post them in the comment box. Soon we'll meet with the next chapter. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe to my channel, Prasanna Lakshmi Tutorials. Thank you.